Hey there, history enthusiasts. If you're enjoying this journey back in time, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. We'd love to hear what sparks your curiosity. Imagine, if you will, the gentle hum of a bygone era, where the sun-kissed streets of Persepolis in the 5th century BCE come alive with the rhythm of daily trade. Picture yourself wandering into an ancient Persian bazaar, not as a hurried visitor, but as a quiet observer, drifting through the scene like a soft breeze over the arid plains. The air is thick with the mingled scents of cumin and saffron, their warm aromas weaving through the pathways like invisible threads, inviting you to pause and breathe deeply. This was the heart of the Achaemenid Empire, a vibrant tapestry of commerce that pulsed with life long before the echoes of modern markets. In those days, the bazaar sprawled across wide, dusty courtyards framed by mud brick stalls, each one a small world unto itself. Merchants, clad in simple tunics of linen, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and indigo, moved with a graceful ease that spoke of years spent in the trade. These men and women, though history has left their names, as whispers lost to time, stood behind counters laden with goods from distant lands, their voices rising and falling in the cadence of negotiation. A subtle wit laced their interactions, as one might quip about the weight of a bolt of silk with a knowing smile, turning commerce into a dance of words. The fabrics themselves added to the sensory symphony, their soft rustle like the sigh of wind through palm leaves. As customers ran fingers over the smooth weaves imported from the Indus Valley, the bazaar was a place of endless exchange, where the clinking of bronze coins against stone counters created a soothing, rhythmic backdrop. Much like rain on a tiled roof, each transaction unfolded with a deliberate pace, allowing the sense of fresh dates and roasted nuts to mingle in the air, drawing in passers-by with their sweet, nutty allure. Picture the merchants weighing goods on balanced scales, the faint creak of wood and metal harmonizing with the distant calls of vendors hawking their wares. Come, see the finest lapis from the east, one might say, his tone as smooth as the polished stones he offered, while another arranged piles of dried herbs, their earthy fragrance rising like a gentle fog. This bustling yet serene environment was the lifeblood of Persepolis, a city that thrived on the movement of goods and ideas. Archaeological reports from Achaemenid sites, such as those excavated at Pasargadae and Persepolis itself, reveal how these markets were organized with meticulous care, featuring wide avenues lined with stalls that catered to both locals and travelers. The merchants, often from humble backgrounds, specialized in everything from spices and textiles to metals and pottery, their stalls forming a mosaic of colors and textures that invited exploration. One could lose themselves in the display of intricate jewelry, the cool touch of gold and silver contrasting with the warmth of the sun-baked earth As the day progressed, the bazaar took on a lullaby like quality, with the sun's rays casting long, golden shadows that softened the edges of the scene. The sound of barter was never harsh. Instead, it flowed like a stream, with merchants employing subtle gestures and measured words to seal deals. A whiff of baking bread from nearby ovens would drift through, its yeasty scent blending with the sharper notes of garlic and onions, creating a comforting aroma that seemed to wrap around you like a warm shawl. These sensory details, preserved in the fragments of ancient records and the remnants of clay seals found in archaeological digs, paint a picture of a community sustained by mutual respect and shared prosperity. Yet, amid this vibrancy, there lies a gentle mystery that adds a layer of intrigue to the narrative. The names of these everyday heroes of the bazaar remain unrecorded in the annals of history, lost to the sands of time like faint stars fading at dawn, while kings and nobles etched their legacies into stone inscriptions. The merchants who fueled the empire's economy slipped into anonymity. Perhaps it was by design, a quiet humility that valued the act of trade over personal acclaim, or simply the oversight of scribes focused on grander affairs. This enigma, drawn from the careful analysis of Achaemenid artifacts, invites us to wonder about the untold stories behind the stall stories of families who passed down their crafts through generations, their identities preserved only in the patterns of their woven goods or the recipes of their spices. The trade itself was a symphony of diversity, with goods flowing in from the far reaches of the empire. Caravans from the west brought olive oil and wine, their containers clinking softly as they were unloaded, while eastern routes supplied exquisite pearls and ivory, their smooth surfaces gleaming under the canvas awnings. Merchants in their tunics, often belted with leather straps for practicality, would inspect these arrivals with a discerning eye, their fingers tracing the edges of a Persian rug or the curve of a clay vessel. The bazaar's layout, as suggested by archaeological surveys, included open spaces for larger transactions, where the murmur of crowds created a soothing backdrop, punctuated by the occasional laughter of a successful deal. Sensory experiences defined every moment here. The taste of a sample fruit, juicy and sun-ripened, offered as a gesture of goodwill, or the feel of cool water from a nearby fountain, its trickle a constant, calming presence. Even the colors played their part, the deep reds of pomegranates piled high, contrasting with the vibrant greens of fresh herbs, all under a sky that shifted from azure blue to soft orange as the day waned. These details, corroborated by findings from sites like Susa, highlight how the bazaar was more than mere commerce. It was a living entity, breathing with the pulse of human interaction. In this realm, the emphasis was always on the positive flow of goods, fostering connections that spanned continents. A merchant might spend hours arranging his display, the faint scent of myrrh from his incense burner wafted wafting through the air, creating an atmosphere of tranquility amidst the busyness. The subtle wit of the traders shone through in their banter, as one might jest about the elusive weight of a spice pouch, turning potential disputes into amicable exchanges. Archaeological evidence, such as the discovery of trade seals and inventory tablets, underscores the efficiency and harmony of these operations, where every item had its place in the greater web of exchange. As evening approached, the bazaar would begin to quiet, the merchants wrapping their goods in cloth and securing their stalls with a final, satisfying click. The lingering scents of the day's trade spices, oils, and baked goods hung in the air like a comforting blanket, ready to lull the mind into reflection. This was the essence of ancient Persian bazaar life, a world of vibrant yet peaceful commerce that sustained an empire. And as we gently close this chapter, with the soft echoes of the bazaar fading like a distant melody, let's ease into the next segment, where we'll explore further aspects of this fascinating era. Until then, may your dreams be filled with the warm scents and soothing sounds of history in the hushed halls of Persepolis, where the ancient stones whispered secrets of empires past. Darius, I sat upon his ornate throne, draped in flowing robes of deep indigo and gold. The air carried the gentle aroma of myrrh, wafting from bronze censers that flickered with soft amber light, as if the very palace breathed in rhythm with the distant hum of the empire. Outside, the sun dipped low over the Zagros Mountains, casting a warm glow through carved windows, illuminating scrolls that rustled faintly in the evening breeze. Here, in this sanctuary of governance, the great king turned his gaze not to the clamor of conquest, but to the steady pulse of commerce and prosperity, shaping an empire through the threads of trade and reform. Darius, with his strong, contemplative features framed by a neatly trimmed beard, oversaw the intricate web of trade routes that stretched from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea. His fingers, adorned with rings of lapis and emerald, traced the edges of a map etched on polished ivory, the material cool and smooth under his touch. The palace rooms, lined with towering columns that echoed the soft pad of servants' footsteps, were filled with the scent of fresh papyrus and ink, a subtle reminder of the meticulous records that defined his rule. In those quiet moments, he envisioned the caravans laden with spices, silks, and grains, traversing well-maintained roads where the crunch of wheels on gravel harmonized with the calls of merchants under starlit skies. It was a reign built not on the sword, but on the scales of balance and the flow of gold. From his earliest days as king, Darius sought to mend the frayed tapestry of the Achaemenid economy, drawing upon inscriptions carved into the rock faces of Behistun and other royal edicts. These ancient texts, preserved in the palace archives, spoke of his vision for a unified system where weights and measures were standardized across vast provinces. Imagine the satisfaction in his eyes as he held a derrick coin, its gold surface gleaming under the flicker of oil lamps, the metal warm against his palm. This currency, bearing his own likeness, with a subtle arch of an eyebrow that hinted at wry amusement, became the heartbeat of trade. No longer would merchants haggle over inconsistent values. Instead, a single standard brought order, like the steady rhythm of a distant drum echoing through the palace courtyards. The reforms extended to the land itself, for Darius understood that an empire's wealth lay in its soil and waters. In the palace gardens, where fountains murmured softly and petals of roses brushed against the wind, he contemplated the irrigation canals that snaked through the plains of Mesopotamia. The air, tinged with the earthy scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, carried the essence of his innovations. By ordering the construction of these waterways, as detailed in the royal inscriptions, he ensured that arid fields bloomed with barley and wheat, transforming barren stretches into bountiful harvests. The sound of water trickling through stone channels became a lullaby of abundance, a gentle reminder that prosperity required patience and foresight. With a subtle wit, one might say Darius tamed the rivers as a shepherd guides his flock, each drop contributing to the greater flow of the empire's riches. Trade flourished under his watchful eye, with routes secured and expanded to welcome goods from distant lands. In the palace's scriptorium, where the faint scratch of quills on parchment created a soothing cadence, scribes recorded the influx of ivory from Africa and lapis from the east, their work illuminated by the warm glow of beeswax candles. Darius, in his robes that whispered against the throne's cushions, oversaw the establishment of royal warehouses, vast halls where the air was heavy with the mingled scents of cedar wood and stored grains. These reforms, etched in the Persepolis tablets, emphasized fair taxation based on land productivity, ensuring that even the farthest satrapies contributed without undue burden. The king's approach was one of quiet wisdom, as if he were a gardener pruning a vine, allowing it to bear fruit in due season. Yet, amid this era of growth, a subtle mystery lingered in the shadows of the palace, like a whisper carried on the night breeze. The lost royal ledgers, volumes of meticulously kept accounts that vanished from the archives, added an enigmatic layer to Darius's legacy. In the dim recesses of the treasury rooms, where the air held a faint trace of aged leather and forgotten ink, courtiers spoke in hushed tones of these missing records. They contained, it was said, the precise details of trade balances and tax yields, insights that could unravel the secrets of his economic mastery. Darius himself, with a detached curiosity in his gaze, pondered their absence during late evenings when the palace grew still, the only sound the distant rustle of palm fronds. Perhaps they were misplaced in the chaos of his early reign, or spirited away by a cunning scribe whose motives remained as elusive as the wind. This enigma, untouched by the bustle of markets or the intrigues of nobles, served as a gentle puzzle, a thread of intrigue woven into the fabric of his reforms, reminding all that even the most ordered empires hold unfathomable depths. As the years unfolded, Darius's economic vision extended to the very foundations of daily life. In the palace kitchens, where the aroma of baking bread and simmering stews created a comforting haze, his policies ensured a steady supply of provisions for the court and beyond. The inscriptions from Susa and Persepolis recount how he encouraged the cultivation of orchards and vineyards, their fruits ripening under the sun's benevolent gaze. The taste of fresh dates, sweet and succulent, became a symbol of his success, shared among advisors in the grand dining halls, where tapestries fluttered softly with a touch of subtle wit. One could imagine Darius chuckling to himself, thinking that if kings could rule with bread and wine alone, wars might fade into mere whispers. His reforms brought a sense of harmony to the empire, fostering alliances through mutual prosperity rather than force. The royal road, that magnificent artery of commerce, facilitated the exchange of not just goods, but ideas, its paved stones echoing with the rhythmic trot of horses and the creak of carts. In the palace's map rooms, where the air was cool and scented with sandalwood, Darius studied routes that connected distant cities, his fingers lingering on the inlaid designs. These paths, as described in the ancient edicts, allowed for the swift movement of tributes and trade, turning the empire into a vast, interconnected web. The sensory delight of a caravan's arrival, the jingle of harnesses, the spicy scent of exotic wares, was a testament to his foresight, a lullaby of progress that soothed the soul. Through it all, Darius maintained a detached poise, his reign a model of steady administration. The palace, with its marble floors that cooled the feet and walls adorned with intricate reliefs, stood as a monument to his achievements. Even in moments of challenge, such as fluctuations in trade or minor scarcities, he approached them with the calm of a sage, focusing on long-term solutions etched into stone for eternity. The lost ledgers, ever a faint shadow, added a layer of quiet fascination, a mystery that invited reflection rather than alarm. As the stars wheeled above Persepolis, casting a silvery light through the windows, Darius's era of reform drew toward its close, leaving a legacy that whispered through the ages. The empire, now more resilient and woven with threads of gold, prepared for the tides of time, hinting at stories yet to unfold in the quiet corners of history. In the fading light of a 5th century BCE evening in Persepolis, the ancient heart of the Achaemenid Empire beat softly amid terraced palaces and winding stone pathways. The air carried a whisper of dust from the day's activities, settling like a gentle veil over the scribes who toiled in modest chambers near the great halls. These men, clad in simple tunics of linen dyed in earthy tones, moved with a quiet rhythm, their fingers tracing symbols onto soft clay tablets. The scratching of styluses against the surface created a soothing cadence, like rain on distant leaves, each stroke preserving the empire's commerce in fragile permanence. The scribes were guardians of order in a vast network of trade that stretched from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea. Seated on low stools in dimly lit rooms, they recorded the influx of goods from bustling caravan spices that carried the warm scent of cinnamon and cardamom, bolts of silk whispering against the air, and metals like gleaming silver that caught the flicker of oil lamps. The clay beneath their tools felt cool and yielding, its surface yielding to pressure with a faint, satisfying give, while the dust from the tablets lingered in the nostrils, a mild, earthy aroma that evoked the vast plains beyond the city walls. This work was not hurried. It unfolded with the steady patience of a river carving through stone, each entry a deliberate act to maintain the empire's economic pulse. In those serene moments, the purposes of these records became clear, woven into the fabric of Achaemenid society as archaeological reports from sites like the Persepolis fortification tablets reveal. These documents served as the empire's ledger, tracking transactions to ensure fair taxation and resource distribution. A scribe might note the arrival of a shipment of dates from the southern oases, their sticky sweetness imagined through the scribe's careful notation. Or tally the exchange of lapis lazuli from the east, its deep blue hue described in symbols that evoked the color of twilight skies. The records helped kings and satraps monitor wealth, prevent corruption, and foster alliances, all while providing a sense of stability in an era of expansion. There was a subtle wit in this system, a quiet acknowledgement that even the mightiest empire relied on the humble scribe's hand to hold its treasures together, like threads in a finely woven tapestry that might unravel without constant care. Yet, as the styluses paused and the lamps dimmed, a mystery began to unfurl, soft as the evening breeze. What became of these meticulous records, those thousands of clay tablets that once filled the archives of Persepolis? Historical accounts, drawn from excavations at the site, suggest that many were lost to the ravages of time and conquest. In the warm glow of the scribe's lamps, one could almost hear the faint crackle of clay drying, a sound like whispers from the past, hinting at the impermanence of their work. The Achaemenid Empire, as documented in archaeological surveys, faced invasions that scattered its treasures. Alexander the Great's forces, for instance, swept through in 330 BCE, leaving fire and chaos in their wake. But the loss of the trade records was more enigmatic. Not a sudden blaze, but a gradual fading, like ink bleeding into sand. Imagine the scribes at their tasks, the air thick with the scent of pressed clay, and the faint oil from their lamps, a comforting aroma that mingled with the distant calls of night birds. Each tablet, once inscribed, was stored in vaults beneath the palaces, where the cool stone floors absorbed the day's heat, creating a hush that amplified the mystery. Why did so many vanish? Perhaps they crumbled under the weight of earthquakes that shook the Zagros Mountains, their fragments scattering like forgotten dreams. Or maybe, as some reports speculate, they were deliberately hidden during times of unrest, buried in secret caches that time has yet to reveal. The sensory world of the scribes, the smooth texture of a freshly etched tablet under fingertips, the rhythmic scrape that echoed softly in the chamber contrasted with this unknown fate, inviting a gentle curiosity rather than alarm. In the empire's heyday, these records were more than mere lists. They were the lifeblood of trade, ensuring that goods flowed smoothly from one satrapy to another. A scribe might document the barter of fine horses from the northern steppes, their muscular forms implied in notations that evoked the thud of hooves on packed earth, or catalog wines from the western vineyards, their rich, fermented scent almost palpable in the scribe's descriptions. Archaeological evidence from the fortification tablets unearthed in the 1930 shows how these documents detailed not just quantities, but the human stories behind them, the merchants who traveled weary miles, the laborers who harvested under the sun's gentle warmth. There was a subtle wit in the way the scribes abbreviated their entries, turning complex transactions into elegant shorthand, as if playing a quiet game with history itself. But the mystery deepens when one considers the gaps in our knowledge, those silent spaces where records should be. Reports from Achaemenid sites indicate that while thousands of tablets survived, many more are missing, perhaps dissolved by the elements or lost to looters in the centuries that followed. In the scribe's chambers, the air might have carried a hint of dampness from nearby irrigation channels, a cool moisture that softened the clay over time, leading to decay. One can picture the tablets stacked neatly, their edges dusted with fine particles that glittered in the lamplight, only to be forgotten as empires shifted. What secrets did they hold? Details of trade routes that could rewrite our understanding of ancient economies, or accounts of exotic goods like ivory from Africa. Its smooth surface described with the precision of a poet's verse. The unknowns linger like a half-remembered melody, calming in their ambiguity, reminding us that not all mysteries demand resolution. As the night deepened in Persepolis, the scribes would set aside their tools, the last scratches fading into silence. The clay dust settled, leaving a faint, powdery residue on their tunics, a tactile reminder of their day's labor. In this lullaby of history, one senses the empire's resilience, even in loss. The trade records, though vanished, echo through the artifacts we have, like the Persepolis tablets that speak of a world in balance. Yet the enigma of what was lost invites a gentle reflection. Perhaps those records, with their sensory tales of spices and silks, await discovery in some hidden crevice, preserved by the earth's embrace through the quiet passages of time. The mystery of the lost Persian trade records weaves into the larger tapestry of the Achaemenid legacy, a thread that leads us onward to the next whisper of the past in the hushed twilight of Persepolis, where the ancient stones of the Achaemenid palaces whispered secrets to the wind. Life unfolded in a rhythm as steady as the Tigris's flow. Imagine, if you will, a noble's residence nestled among the terraced heights, its vast halls echoing with the soft footsteps of attendants and the faint rustle of silk. Here, in the 5th century BCE, the air carried the warm spice of saffron and myrrh, drawing one into a world of quiet splendor, far from the clamor of markets or the decrees of kings. The sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the columned halls that rose like guardians from the earth. Each pillar, hewn from gray limestone and adorned with carvings of mythical beasts and floral motifs, stood tall as sentinels of prosperity. Within these chambers, Persian nobles gathered for their evening repasts, their forms draped in robes of finest silk, dyed in shades of crimson and azure that caught the light like captured sunsets. The fabric, imported from distant lands and woven with threads finer than a spider's web, whispered against their skin as they reclined on cushioned divans, their movements graceful and unhurried. A gentle breeze wafted through the open arches, carrying the intoxicating scent of saffron-infused stews simmering in bronze cauldrons. The kitchens, hidden beyond the main halls, bustled with quiet efficiency, where cooks stirred pots of barley and lamb, seasoned with cumin and coriander that perfumed the air. One could almost taste the richness before the first bite, the spices mingling with the subtle sweetness of dates and figs, all served on platters of polished silver etched with ancient symbols of abundance. The nobles dined leisurely, their conversations a soft murmur like distant waves, discussing matters of courtly intrigue or the beauty of the stars above the Zagros mountains. Lamps flickered along the walls, their oil flames dancing in terracotta vessels, casting a warm, amber glow that softened the edges of reality. Each light revealed glimpses of opulence. Tapestries woven with gold threads depicting lions and eagles, their colors vibrant against the cool stone. Jeweled goblets, heavy with emeralds and lapis lazuli, glinted as they were raised in toasts. The wine within a deep red from Median vineyards, tasting of sun-ripened grapes, and a hint of honey. The scene was one of serene extravagance, where every detail spoke of a life cultivated for pleasure, untouched by the hardships of the common folk. As the evening deepened, musicians entered the hall, their lyres and flutes producing melodies that floated like feathers on the breeze. The notes were light and soothing, evoking the rustle of palm leaves or the call of night birds, a subtle wit in their rhythms that teased without overwhelming. A noble might smile faintly at a familiar tune, perhaps recalling a story of how such music once lulled a weary traveler in the royal gardens. The air grew heavier with the scent of rosewater, sprinkled by silent servants who moved like shadows, their presence a mere whisper against the polished floors. In this world of refined ease, the palace treasures held a quiet allure, their origins as mysterious as the stars. Excavations from later ages have uncovered fragments of this lost splendor, gold derricks and ornate seals buried beneath the ruins. But tales persist of items that vanished without trace. One might ponder, in the flickering lamplight, the fate of a legendary necklace said to have adorned a noble's consort, its pearls gleaming like moonlight on the Euphrates. Crafted in the workshops of Sardes, it disappeared during a feast much like this one, leaving only whispers among the courtiers. Was it spirited away by a trusted servant, or claimed by the earth in some ancient upheaval? The mystery lingers, a gentle enigma that adds a layer of intrigue to the night's tranquility without disturbing the peace. The nobles, their faces illuminated by the soft glow, exuded an air of timeless grace. Men with beards oiled and curled, women with hair bound in intricate braids, adorned with amethyst, all partaking in the feast with a detachment that spoke of their elevated station. They spoke of the season cycles, how the spring rains brought forth wildflowers whose petals scented the palace courtyards, or how the autumn winds carried the taste of ripening pomegranates. Each meal was a ritual, a celebration of abundance drawn from the empire's vast reaches, from the fertile plains of Mesopotamia to the high plateaus of Persia proper. Yet amid the opulence, there was a subtle wit in the way life unfolded, a quiet humor in the imperfections that made it human. A servant might fumble a tray, eliciting a soft chuckle from the assembly, or a dish might surprise with an unexpected spice, drawing amused murmurs. These moments, fleeting and light, wove through the evenings like threads in a tapestry, reminding that even in grandeur, the world turned with gentle unpredictability. As the night advanced, the halls grew quieter, the lamps burning low and casting elongated shadows that played across the columns. The sense of the feast lingered, a comforting blend of roasted meats and fresh herbs, while the cool night air carried hints of dew-kissed gardens beyond. Here, in the heart of Persepolis, one could imagine the palace as a living entity, its stones holding memories of countless such gatherings, each one an echo of the empire's golden age. Historical accounts from Achaemenid excavations, such as those at the Apadana, reveal the meticulous craftsmanship of these spaces, with their vast audience halls designed for display rather than daily utility. The nobles' robes, as documented in reliefs, were not mere garments, but symbols of status, their silk imported at great expense and dyed with pigments from afar. Sensory details from these reports paint a vivid picture. The flicker of oil lamps illuminating intricate friezes, the aroma of spices that filled the air during banquets, all contributing to an atmosphere of cultivated luxury. In one such excavated hall, archaeologists found remnants of feasting shards of fine pottery and traces of exotic residues that speak to the daily rhythms of palace life. The mystery of the lost treasures, perhaps including a famed collection of ivory carvings, adds a layer of fascination. These items, once displayed in alcoves lined with lapis, are thought to have been hidden or lost during the empire's decline. Their absence, a poignant reminder of time's passage. Yet in the telling, we approach such losses with a detached calm, focusing on the beauty they once embodied rather than the sorrow of their vanishing. As the stars wheeled overhead, the nobles retired to their chambers, where the air was fresh with the scent of jasmine from hanging gardens. The palace settled into a peaceful hush, the columns standing vigilant through the night. And so, as this scene fades like a dream at dawn, one might wonder what other wonders await in the unfolding tapestry of history, drawing us gently toward the next whisper of the past. In the hushed dawn of 5th century BCE Persepolis, where the ancient stones of the Achaemenid capital whispered secrets to the rising sun, the merchants of the bazaar began their quiet ballet of commerce. Soft light filtered through the narrow alleys, casting gentle shadows on the mud brick stalls, and the air carried a faint, earthy scent of dew-kissed dust. These men, clad in simple tunics of coarse, wool dyed in earthy hues, moved with the deliberate grace of those who had inherited the rhythms of empire, their days unfolding like the unfurling petals of a desert flower under the vast Persian sky. As the first rays touched the towering Apadana, merchants like Darius, a trader in fine linens, stirred from their modest homes on the city's outskirts. He rose from his pallet, the cool clay floor pressing against his bare feet, a subtle reminder of the empire's unyielding earth. The room smelled of lingering smoke from the previous night's hearth, where embers glowed faintly in the pre-dawn gloom. Darius donned his tunic, the fabric rustling softly as it settled over his shoulders, its threads woven from distant looms in the satrapies of Lydia or Egypt, traces of the vast trade networks documented in the royal archives at Susa. With a wry smile, he might have thought, as many did, that the gods favored the early riser. For in Persepolis, the day's profits often hinged on the speed of one's preparations. Carrying baskets of goods balanced on sturdy shoulders, Darius and his fellows made their way through the awakening city. The paths were lined with acacia trees, their leaves whispering in the breeze, and the distant bleat of goats echoed like a lullaby against the stone walls. By the time they reached the bazaar, the air had warmed slightly, carrying the first hints of baking bread from nearby homes and the sharp tang of spices ground in mortars. Historical records from the Achaemenid era, etched on clay tablets and inscribed in the Behistun reliefs, speak of these merchants as pillars of the empire's economy, their routines a blend of necessity and tradition. Yet there lies a gentle mystery in their unrecorded schedules, the precise moments when one merchant paused to share a jest with another, or when the stall arrangements shifted with the wind, remain lost to time, as if the scribes of Darius, the great, deemed such details too ephemeral for stone. At the bazaar, the merchant set to work with a serene rhythm. Darius arranged his linens on wooden racks, the fabrics sliding smoothly over one another, their colors catching the light like ripples on the Euphrates. Silks from the east glimmered with a subtle sheen, while heavier wools draped like protective cloaks, their textures evoking the highlands of Media. The dusty air hung lightly around him, particles dancing in sunbeams, and the faint creak of stall beams under the weight of goods added a comforting cadence to the morning. Nearby, another merchant, perhaps named Artaxerxes, specialized in metals, bronze mirrors, and iron tools, polished to a soft glow. He laid out his wares on low tables, the clink of metal against wood a muted symphony, each piece a testament to the empire's metallurgical prowess, as noted in trade manifests from the time. As the sun climbed higher, the bazaar stirred to life. Though the merchants maintained their poised detachment, they moved between customers with an almost hypnotic flow, their tunics swaying gently as they gestured to bolts of cloth or stacks of pottery. The scent of myrrh and frankincense from a neighboring stall wafted over, mingling with the warm earthiness of the ground, creating a tapestry of aromas that soothed the senses. Darius, with his subtle wit, might exchange a knowing glance with a fellow trader, remarking under his breath about the elusive nature of a good bargain, as if the winds themselves conspired to hide the best deals. Historical accounts from Achaemenid records detail how these merchants operated under the king's laws, their transactions taxed and tallied. Yet the finer grains of their daily pauses, perhaps a moment to sip cool water from a clay jug, its surface cool against parched lips, slip into that same unrecorded haze, a mystery as soft as the dawn mist. By mid-morning, the routines deepened into a steady hum. Merchants like Cyrus, who dealt in spices, would meticulously organize his jars, the grains of saffron and cumin releasing their pungent whispers into the air. He dusted off the containers with a cloth, the fine particles floating like golden flecks in the light, evoking the vast caravans that traversed the royal road. As chronicled in the Persepolis fortification tablets, the warmth of the sun on his back was a gentle companion, and the occasional rustle of a bird's wings overhead added a whimsical note to the scene. In these hours, the merchants might share brief conversations, their voices low and melodic, discussing the quality of goods from Elam or the latest news from Sardis, all while maintaining the empire's famed order. Yet, woven through these interactions was the enigma of their unscripted interludes, the spontaneous adjustments to a stall's layout when a breeze stirred the fabrics, or the unspoken decisions to extend credit to a trusted buyer, elements that trade records gloss over, leaving a subtle intrigue for the curious mind. As the day progressed toward noon, The merchants paused for respite, their routines aligning with the sun's zenith. Darius would step back from his stall, wiping his brow with the edge of his tunic, the fabric absorbing the faint sheen of sweat. Like the earth drinks rain, the air grew heavier, laden with the scent of midday meals, barley stew simmering in clay pots, its steam rising in lazy curls. Historical examples from Achaemenid sources, such as the accounts of royal banquets, suggest that even humble traders emulated the court's discipline, breaking for a simple repast under the shade of awnings. Artaxerxes might recline briefly on a woven mat, the fibers rough yet comforting against his skin, contemplating the day's flow with a quiet humor, perhaps musing that the gods, in their wisdom, had forgotten to record such mundane graces. This period of calm, with the bazaar's sounds softening to a murmur, the distant chatter of voices, the soft thud of footsteps on packed earth, hinted at the deeper mystery. How these routines, so vital to the empire's heartbeat, remained partially veiled, their full cadence known only to those who lived them. In the afternoon, as shadows lengthened, the merchants resumed with renewed focus. Cyrus arranged his spices anew, the aromatic oils leaving a faint residue on his fingers, a sensory reminder of lands beyond the Zagros mountains. The tunics, now warmed by the sun, rustled less frequently, as if attuned to the slowing pace. Customers browsed with leisurely intent, their inquiries met with the merchant's soothing assurances, drawing from the Achaemenid emphasis on fairness in trade. Darius, ever the observer, might note the way light played on his linens, turning them into a canvas of subtle colors, and with a touch of wit, ponder how the unrecorded schedules of his peers allowed for such serendipitous encounters. Sales that seemed fated, yet undocumented in the archives. As evening approached, the routines wound down like a gentle exhale. The merchants began to pack their goods, the fabrics folding with a soft whisper, the metals clinking in a rhythmic farewell. Darius secured his stall, the dust settling around him like a quiet shroud, and the air cooled with the promise of night. Historical records attest to the merchants' return to their homes, where family and rest awaited. But the mystery persists, the unspoken variations in their days, the impromptu gatherings, or solitary reflections that never made it to parchment. With the bazaar's lights dimming, one might imagine Darius glancing back, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if to say that some rhythms are best left to the wind. And so, as the stars emerged over Persepolis, the merchant's day faded into the empire's vast tapestry, a soothing prelude to the morrow, where the unrecorded might yet reveal its secrets in the soft light of dawn. In the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun rose gently over the jagged peaks of the Zagros mountains, the bazaar stirred to life like a quiet river finding its course. Merchants in simple tunics of woven linen, dyed in earthy shades of ochre and indigo, moved with a deliberate grace among the stalls. These men and women, bearers of goods from distant lands, gathered under awnings of stretched goat hide, their voices a soft murmur against the vast expanse of the empire's trade networks. The air carried the faint scent of cardamom and myrrh, mingling with the warm dust that settled on everything like a fine veil, inviting one to pause and breathe deeply in the rhythm of commerce. Here, in the 5th century BCE, under the vast canopy of the Achaemenid realm, trading was an art as old as the cuneiform tablets that recorded royal decrees. A merchant might arrive at dawn, his tunic belted with a leather strap, holding small pouches of silver sigloi coins, each one clinking softly as he adjusted his load. The sound was subtle, like distant chimes in a breeze, drawing traders together in a dance of negotiation. They bartered not with haste, but with the patience of those who understood the empire's vast web of routes, the royal road stretching from Sardis to Susa, where caravans carried silks from the east and amber from the north. A seller of fine woolens, his hands calloused from years of handling bolts of fabric, would eye a buyer across a low table, the fabric's soft weave catching the morning light. The techniques were rooted in trust and tradition, drawn from the Persepolis fortification tablets that detailed allocations of grain and livestock for royal favor. A merchant might begin by presenting his wares. A cluster of dates from the palm groves of Mesopotamia, their sticky sweetness tempting the air, or blocks of lapis lazuli from the mines of Badakhshan, cool and smooth under probing fingers. Bartering unfolded like a whispered conversation, with gestures as telling as words. One might nod toward a scale, its bronze pan balanced with precise weights inscribed in cuneiform, ensuring fairness in every exchange. The clink of coins against the scale's edge was a reassuring note, a tactile promise of value, while the dust of ground spices, cinnamon, and coriander lingered on the breeze, coating tongues with a hint of exotic promise. Wit crept into these interactions, subtle as the shadow of a passing cloud. A merchant, perhaps with a wry smile hidden beneath his beard, might jest about the weight of a rival's goods, saying, "Your silver feels as light as the king's promises," before they both chuckled and adjusted their offers. This humor eased the flow, turning potential disputes into shared amusement. Techniques varied by commodity. For textiles, merchants relied on the feel of the weave, running fingers over the threads to detect quality. The faint rustle, a sensory cue of durability. For spices, they might crush a sample between thumb and forefinger, releasing an aroma that evoked distant markets. The sharp tang of pepper from India mingling with the earthy undertone of local herbs. Yet amid this orderly exchange, there lay a mystery, an unrecorded shadow in the annals of Achaemenid trade. While tablets meticulously noted official transactions, allocations of wine for feasts or medals for the treasury, certain methods remained whispered secrets, passed in the quiet corners of the bazaar. Perhaps it was the use of hidden tokens, small clay seals imprinted with personal symbols, exchanged under cloaks to signal trust in deals not meant for the scribes. Or maybe it was the art of gauging a buyer's true intent through subtle cues, like the way their eyes lingered on a particular gemstone, revealing desires unspoken. These techniques, absent from the formal records, added an air of intrigue, a gentle enigma that floated like spice dust in the sunlight. One could imagine a merchant, his tunic sleeves rolled to reveal forearms dusted with the fine powder of traded goods, employing such methods to outmaneuver a competitor, all while maintaining the calm facade of the marketplace. The sensory world of the bazaar enveloped everything in a soothing haze. The warmth of the sun-baked earth rose through the soles of sandaled feet, while the occasional breeze carried the salty tang of dried fish from the Caspian Sea. Laid out on mats beside piles of gleaming olives, merchants moved with a lullaby-like rhythm, their bartering a series of soft questions and affirmations. What value do you place on this wool, fine as the king's tapestries? The response might come with a gentle counter. And what of your spices, rich enough to flavor the gods' feasts? Coins exchanged hands with a muted jingle, each transaction a thread in the empire's economic tapestry, woven from the diverse peoples who traversed its roads. Historical accounts, such as those etched into the Behistun inscription, hint at the empire's sophisticated trade systems, where Darius eyes reforms standardized weights and measures to prevent deceit. A merchant might use a set of bronze balances, calibrated to the royal standard, to weigh gold dust or silver ingots. The metal's cool weight, a tangible measure of prosperity. This precision extended to credit arrangements, where verbal agreements, backed by familial bonds or temple oaths, allowed for deferred payments, a technique that fostered long-term alliances without the need for immediate coin. The air would grow thick with the scent of brewing tea from the eastern provinces, shared between parties to seal deals, its steam rising like a soft sigh in the afternoon calm. As the day progressed, the mystery deepened. Unrecorded methods might involve the interpretation of omens, a subtle nod to the Zoroastrian influences of the era, where a merchant consulted the flight of birds or the pattern of stars before finalizing a bargain. Such practices, though not documented in official tablets, persisted as oral traditions, a hidden layer beneath the surface of commerce. One could feel the weight of this secrecy in the air, a quiet undercurrent that made each exchange feel like a story unfolding. The merchants, with their tunics slightly frayed from travel, embodied this blend of the known and the enigmatic, their faces etched with the wisdom of routes that spanned from Egypt's Nile to the Indus Valley. Sensory details wove through every moment. The crunch of gravel underfoot as one navigated the stalls, the faint metallic taste of dust on the lips from the constant sifting of goods, and the gentle hum of voices that rose and fell like waves. On a distant shore, a buyer might run a hand over a bolt of silk, its smooth surface a whisper against the skin, while negotiating its price. These interactions were not mere transactions, but rituals, preserving the empire's economic harmony. Historical examples abound, like the trade in horses from the Central Asian steppes, where merchants assessed breeding lines through careful observation, their eyes narrowing in quiet evaluation. Yet, even in this calm, the unrecorded techniques added a layer of fascination. Perhaps it was the use of coded language, where a simple phrase like "the wind from the east" signaled a willingness to offer a lower price, known only to those initiated into the bazaar's unspoken codes. This mystery, untouched by the scribes, lent an element of wonder to the proceedings, a subtle wit in the face of the empire's grandeur. As the sun arced toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the stalls, the merchants wrapped up their dealings with the same measured pace, their tunics stirring in the evening breeze. In this way, the bazaar's life continued, a soothing cadence in the vast symphony of the Achaemenid world. As the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant treasures, one might reflect on how these trading techniques, both documented and hidden, formed the backbone of an empire. And so, with the soft close of the day's commerce, the scene fades gently, leading toward the whispers of what lies beyond, perhaps the echoes of distant lands, or the quiet turn of another tale. Word count 1,500 in the hushed heart of Persepolis, where the ancient stones of the Achaemenid Empire whispered secrets to the wind. The bazaar stirred with a rhythm as steady as the Tigris's flow. It was the 5th century BCE, and beneath the vast arches of the royal city, merchants paused from their stalls to tend to the tools that sustained their trade. These were not mere instruments of commerce, but relics of craftsmanship, forged in the fires of forgotten forges, and polished by hands that carried the empire's legacy. Amid the soft shuffle of sandaled feet and the distant call of doves, a group of merchants gathered in the shade of woven awnings, their simple tunics of linen and wool draped like gentle waves over their forms. Each man, weathered by the sun's embrace, moved with a deliberate grace, as if performing a ritual passed down through generations, one that bound them to the earth's enduring mysteries. The air hung thick with the scent of aged cedar and sun-baked clay, a subtle perfume that mingled with the faint metallic tang of tools long in use. One merchant, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of wear, knelt before a set of bronze scales, their beams etched with faint, intricate patterns that spoke of skilled artisans from eras past. He reached for a cloth, soft as a whisper, and began to wipe away the dust that had settled in the crevices. The sound was a soft scrape, like the sigh of wind through palm fronds, as metal met fabric in a dance of care. Nearby, another merchant held a whetstone to the edge of a measuring rod, the stone's gentle grind echoing like a lullaby, rhythmic soothing, inviting the mind to drift on waves of repetition. Dust particles danced in the slanting light, tiny specks that caught the eye and sparkled like stars in a twilight sky, reminding all who watched of the impermanence that cloaked even the most steadfast creations. In this corner of the bazaar, away from the main thoroughfares where voices rose in barter, the merchants focused solely on preservation, their tools scales of varying sizes, balances with ivory inlays, and weights carved from dense basalt were more than utilities. They were testaments to the Achaemenid ingenuity, as revealed in the archaeological treasures unearthed from Persepolis's ruins. Excavations had uncovered similar artifacts, such as the precisely balanced scales from the Apadana palace, their mechanisms suggesting a mastery of metallurgy that blended Persian innovation with influences from conquered lands. Yet, as these men worked, they did so with a quiet reverence, knowing that each stroke of the cloth or pass of the stone guarded against the erosion of time. The merchant with the scales paused, his fingers tracing the faint engravings, symbols that hinted at astronomical alignments or sacred geometries, details that archaeologists had puzzled over for centuries. A subtle wit lingered in their movements, for even in this meticulous task, there was a light-hearted acknowledgement of the tool's quirks. One scale, slightly warped from years of exposure to the desert's dry heat, required a clever adjustment. A small wedge of olive wood, placed just so to maintain its true balance. The merchant chuckled softly to himself, a sound like the rustle of leaves, at the way the tool seemed to have a mind of its own, as if it were an old friend with its own tales to tell. Around him, the air grew warmer as the sun climbed higher, carrying with it the earthy aroma of the ground itself, warmed by the day's gentle touch. Sensory memories wove through the scene. The cool, smooth feel of polished bronze under calloused palms, the faint grit of sand that clung to everything, and the occasional spark of light reflecting off a freshly cleaned surface, like a fleeting star in the marketplace's canopy. As the merchants continued, their actions unfolded with the calm of a river's current, each motion deliberate and unhurried. Another man, his tunic tied loosely at the waist, turned his attention to a set of nested weights, small cylinders of lead and stone that fit together like pieces of an ancient puzzle. He dipped a rag into a basin of water scented with pressed herbs, the liquid carrying a fresh, minty undertone that cut through the dust. With careful strokes, he cleaned each weight, the water beading and running off in tiny rivulets, creating soft patters against the stall's wooden surface. The sound was almost musical, a gentle percussion that blended with the distant hum of the city, where the great audience halls of Darius stood silent sentinel. Historical fragments from Achaemenid sites, like the reliefs at Pasargadae, showing similar tools in use, informed their methods, ensuring that every clean was not just maintenance, but a homage to to the empire's precision engineering. Yet, woven into this serene routine was a thread of mystery, one that set the heart pondering in the quiet hours. The lost tool designs, those elusive blueprints of Achaemenid ingenuity, lingered like shadows in the merchants' minds. Archaeologists had long marveled at the sophistication of Persepolis's artifacts, the intricate filigree on scale hooks, or the precise calibrations on measuring devices. But many designs had vanished with the empire's fall. Whispers among the stalls spoke of scrolls, perhaps hidden in the labyrinthine archives of forgotten palaces, that once detailed these creations. As the merchant polished a particularly ornate balance, its surface revealing faint, indecipherable script, he wondered about the craftsmen who had forged it. Had they encoded secrets within the metal, patterns that aligned with the stars, or echoed the empire's vast road networks? The mystery deepened with each stroke, a subtle enigma that added a layer of intrigue without disrupting the calm. For in this world, such unknowns were not fearsome, but invitations to gentle reflection. The dusty air, now stirred by a light breeze, carried particles that settled like fine silk on exposed skin, a tactile reminder of the passage of time. One could almost feel the weight of history in the air, a comforting pressure that spoke of continuity. The merchants, their tunics now dusted with the same fine layer, worked on, their breaths steady and deep, inhaling the mingled scents of iron and earth. In the background, the soft clink of tools being realigned echoed faintly, like the chime of distant bells, each note a testament to the care bestowed upon them. From the archaeological record, examples abounded. The discovery of tool kits in the treasury at Persepolis, with their array of balances and weights, showed how such maintenance was not merely practical, but ritualistic, ensuring the tool's harmony with the cosmic order. As the afternoon waned, the light softened, casting a golden hue over the stalls and illuminating the merchants' patient faces. One man, pausing to inspect a newly cleaned scale, noted how the metal gleamed under the sun's caress, its surface free of imperfections, save for those intentional marks that hinted at lost knowledge. The mystery of those designs, perhaps carried away by winds of conquest or buried in the sands, added a poetic melancholy to the scene, a subtle wit in the universe's way of concealing its wonders. Yet in this moment, there was no urgency, only the soothing rhythm of preservation, a lullaby for the soul amid the empire's enduring legacy. Transitioning from this quiet diligence, one might imagine the merchants rising soon, their tools ready once more, as the bazaar's pulse quickened toward the evening's repose, leading naturally to the tales of the empire's broader horizons. Word count 1,500 in the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun dipped low over the weathered stone arches of the bazaar. A gentle rhythm of life unfolded among the merchants. These men, clad in simple tunics of fine wool dyed in earthy hues of ochre and indigo, as the day's trade waned, their faces, etched with the lines of journeys across vast Achaemenid roads, turned toward one another in the soft glow of oil lamps. Here, amid the stalls laden with spices and silks, they shared not just goods, but the invisible threads of community, woven through shared meals and quiet exchanges. The air carried a lullaby of scents, sizzling flatbreads, kissed by flames on clay hearths. The warm aroma of barley stew, laced with cumin and dates, mingling with the faint, earthy perfume of packed dirt floors. Each merchant moved with a deliberate grace, as if the day's clamor had ebbed into a serene tide. One, an elder with a beard, streaked in silver, unfolded a worn mat under a canopy of woven reeds, inviting others to join. They settled cross-legged, their tunics brushing against the ground, the fabric soft from years of wear, and washing in the nearby mountain streams. Bowls of yogurt-thickened soup were passed hand to hand, the steam rising like whispers from the past as they broke bread, the crust crackling just enough to release its inner warmth. Conversations flowed in hushed tones, a subtle wit threading through their words. "Ah, my friend," one might say with a knowing smile, "your dates are as sweet as the tales you spin of distant Susa, but I wager the road there has more twists than your bargains." Such banter, light as the evening breeze, bound them closer, fostering ties that echoed the Achaemenid emphasis on mutual trust in trade. As noted in the royal inscriptions of Darius, the bazaar, a labyrinth of narrow alleys lined with hanging lanterns, hummed with sensory harmony. The soft chatter of voices blended like a distant melody, punctuated only by the occasional clink of bronze cups filled with diluted wine, or the gentle pop of roasting nuts. One could almost feel the warmth of the fire pits, their embers glowing red like the setting sun over the Zagros Mountains, while the taste of fresh pomegranate seeds burst on the tongue, tart and refreshing against the richness of lamb kebabs. These gatherings were more than mere sustenance. They were rituals of solidarity, drawing from the social fabric of the Achaemenid Empire, where merchants formed informal networks to navigate the complexities of long-distance trade. Historical accounts, such as those preserved in the Persepolis fortification tablets, reveal how these bonds facilitated the movement of goods from the Indus to the Aegean. Yet, they seldom captured the essence of the personal alliances forged over such meals. As twilight deepened, the merchants leaned in, their shadows merging on the ground like ancient friezes. The mystery of their unwritten friendships lingered in the air, an enigma as elusive as the wind through the market's arches. In an era where royal edicts and clay tablets documented taxes and transactions, these deeper connections remained unrecorded, preserved only in fleeting gestures, a nod of understanding, a shared glance that spoke of shared hardships on the royal road. One might ponder how such bonds formed. Perhaps in the quiet moments after a hard bargain, when a merchant offered an extra measure of grain not out of obligation, but from a wellspring of unspoken loyalty. This mystery, untouched by the scribes of the court, added a layer of intrigue to their gatherings, a subtle undercurrent that hinted at the human heart's capacity for enduring ties beyond the ledger's reach. The scene unfolded with a calming cadence, each element inviting reflection. The merchants, their tunics draped loosely over broad shoulders, reached for clay pitchers of cool water drawn from the nearby canets. The ancient underground channels that sustained the city, the water's chill against their palms, provided a soothing contrast to the day's heat, a reminder of the empire's ingenious engineering, as celebrated in the Behistun inscription. As they sipped, the faint taste of minerals from the earth evoked memories of home villages, far-flung outposts where similar meals might be shared under starlit skies. One merchant, his eyes crinkling with quiet humor, recounted a tale of a caravan that had evaded bandits through sheer camaraderie. His voice, a gentle lilt that wove through the group like smoke from the hearths. Sensory details enveloped the gathering. The soft rustle of fabrics as they shifted positions, the warm embrace of spiced air that carried hints of saffron and rosewater from nearby perfumeries, and the distant call of a nightingale echoing from the palace gardens beyond. Yet in this space, the merchants created their own world, one where the hierarchies of the Achaemenid court held little sway. Unlike the grand audiences in the Apadana Hall, these moments were democratic, each voice equal in the circle. A younger trader, his tunic still crisp from recent weaving, might offer a piece of fruit, its juicy flesh symbolizing the generosity that underpinned their community. Through such acts, they upheld the empire's ethos of reciprocity, as evidenced in the administrative texts that detailed fair exchanges, though never the personal warmth that accompanied them. As the meal progressed, the mystery deepened, a soft puzzle that invited contemplation without resolution. How did these friendships endure across seasons of scarcity and abundance? When droughts parched the lands, or floods swelled the rivers, the tablets spoke of grain allocations and debt settlements, but not of the quiet pacts sealed over shared bread. Perhaps it was in the way one merchant would rise to defend another's honor in a dispute, or in the shared laughter that echoed like a lullaby through the stalls. This unwritten code, a testament to the human spirit's resilience, remained a gentle enigma. Much like the faint stars emerging above, their light traveling from distant times, the group fell into a rhythmic silence at intervals, broken only by the crackle of the fire or the soft sigh of contentment. One could imagine the scene as a living tapestry, each merchant a thread in the larger weave of Achaemenid society. Historical examples, such as the trade guilds implied in the Elamite cuneiform records, suggested that such bonds were crucial for maintaining stability in the empire's vast economy. Yet here in the bazaar, it was the personal, the intangible, that held sway. A merchant might trace a finger along the edge of his tunic, the fabrics weave telling stories of distant looms, while another nodded in silent agreement. Their friendship, a secret language lost to the ages as the night air grew cooler, carrying the scent of dew settling on the market's awnings. The merchants lingered, the soft chatter resumed, laced with subtle wit, a jest about a rival trader's overpriced silks, delivered with a smile that spoke volumes. These moments, rich in sensory detail, painted a picture of community that transcended the mere exchange of goods. The mystery of their unwritten friendships, ever present, added a layer of depth, a reminder that some bonds are etched not in stone, but in the heart. In time, as the lamps flickered low, the merchants began to disperse, each carrying a piece of the night's warmth with them. Yet the essence of their gathering lingered, a calming echo in the quiet bazaar. And so, as the stars wheeled above Persepolis, thoughts turned gently toward the broader tapestry of life, where other stories await in the shadows of history. In the heart of Persepolis, where the ancient stones of the Achaemenid Empire whispered secrets to the wind, the bazaars unfolded like a tapestry of commerce and reverence. It was the 5th century BCE, an era when the sun-drenched avenues buzzed with the soft shuffle of sandaled feet and the murmur of bartered goods. Amid the stalls laden with silks and spices, Persian merchants in simple tunics paused at day's end, turning their gazes toward the sacred fire altars that flickered like distant stars brought to earth. These men, weathered by trade winds and the weight of their wares, embodied a quiet devotion, their rituals woven into the fabric of daily life with the gentleness of a lullaby. The merchants moved with a graceful rhythm, their tunics of fine linen draping loosely over broad shoulders, the fabric swaying like pale waves in the evening breeze. Each one carried a small offering, perhaps a handful of dried herbs, or a vial of precious oil gathered from the day's profits, as if it were a tribute to the eternal flame. The fire altars stood at the bazaar's edges, modest structures of stone and clay, their hearths glowing with a steady, hypnotic light that cast long shadows across the packed earth. As the merchants approached, the air grew thick with the scent of burning cedar and myrrh, a smoky embrace that lingered on the skin and evoked memories of harvests past. One by one, they knelt before the altars, their movements deliberate and unhurried, as if time itself bent to the will of the flames. A merchant named Darius, his tunic frayed at the hems from years of travel, extended his hands toward the fire, palms upward in a gesture as old as the empire. He murmured soft prayers in the ancient tongue, words that flowed like a gentle stream, invoking Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord of Light, to bless his scales and safeguard his journeys. The prayers were not loud proclamations, but whispers carried on the warm air, blending with the crackle of the fire and the distant coo of pigeons roosting in the arches overhead. It was a scene of serene harmony, where the smoky tendrils rising from the altar curled lazily into the twilight, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. In these moments, the bazaar transformed from a place of barter to a sanctuary of the soul. The merchants, with their sun-kissed faces and calloused fingers, offered not out of obligation, but from a deep-seated reverence that had been passed down through generations. Historical records from the Achaemenid inscriptions at Naksh-e-Rustam speak of such practices, where fire was seen as a pure element, a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine. The altars, often tended by priests in the grand temples, found their echo in the bazaars, where ordinary men like these merchants performed simplified rites to maintain balance in their lives. As the flames danced, they reflected the golden threads woven into the merchants' tunics, a subtle reminder of the empire's opulence, from the royal treasuries to the humblest stall. Yet there was a mystery to these rituals, an unwritten essence that eluded even the most diligent scribes of the time. While Achaemenid records, such as those etched on the Behistun inscription, detailed the grand ceremonies of kings and nobles, the daily observances of the bazaar merchants remained shrouded in oral tradition, never fully captured in stone or clay. What precise words did Darius whisper as he poured oil into the fire, watching it hiss and spark? Were their secret gestures, passed from father to son, that invoked protections against unseen misfortunes? The air around the altars seemed to hold this enigma, a gentle veil of uncertainty that added a layer of wonder to the proceedings. One might imagine, in the soft glow, that the flames themselves guarded these unspoken customs, flickering in patterns that only the initiated could interpret. The sensory world of these rituals enveloped all who drew near. The warmth of the fire caressed the merchant's skin like a benevolent hand, chasing away the chill of the desert nights that often crept into Persepolis after sunset. The smoke, aromatic and soothing, wove through the air, carrying hints of frankincense that evoked the distant mountains where such resins were harvested. Sounds, too, played their part, the low chant of prayers, merging with the occasional rustle of fabric or the faint clink of amulets dangling from the merchants' necks. These amulets, simple carvings of sacred symbols, caught the firelight, glinting like stars fallen to earth, a witty nod, perhaps, to the merchant's dual mastery of earthly trade and heavenly favor. As the rituals unfolded, the merchants' expressions softened, their eyes half closed in contemplation, as if the fire's glow revealed hidden truths. Historical accounts from the Achaemenid period, preserved in the writings of Greek observers like Herodotus, though filtered through foreign eyes, hint at the universality of such practices across the empire. In Persepolis, however, the bazaar altars were unique, intimate affairs, far removed from the grandiose fire temples of the capital. A merchant might pause to adjust a log on the hearth, the wood crackling with a satisfying pop that echoed like a quiet laugh, a subtle wit in the face of life's uncertainties. These moments fostered a personal connection to the divine, where the act of offering became a meditation, a way to align one's spirit with the cosmic order. But the mystery persisted, a gentle puzzle that lingered in the air like the fading smoke. What if the merchants incorporated elements from older traditions, perhaps remnants of pre-Achaemenid beliefs that had never been documented? The unwritten rituals might have included specific incenses blended under the moonlight, or silent vows made at the first spark of dawn. Such thoughts added a dreamlike quality to the scene, inviting the observer to ponder the unseen threads that bound these men to their faith. In the soft prayers, one could almost hear the echo of ancient voices, a lullaby of devotion that transcended the written word. As the night deepened, the merchants rose from their knees, their tunics dusted with ash, and returned to their stalls with a renewed sense of peace. The fire altars continued to burn, their flames steady and unyielding, a beacon in the vast expanse of the bazaar. This was the essence of their religious life, a blend of duty and mystery that sustained them through the trials of trade. Yet, even as the rituals ended, the air retained a trace of that smoky fragrance, a reminder of the enduring spirit of Persepolis. To ensure the accuracy of these depictions, one turns to the Achaemenid religious texts, such as the Avesta fragments that survive from later periods, which affirm the centrality of fire in Zoroastrian worship. The merchants' practices mirrored the broader imperial customs, where fire symbolized purity and truth. But in the bazaars, they took on a more personal, everyday form. The sensory details the warmth enveloping the body, the aromatic smoke curling upward painted a vivid picture of this devotion, drawing from historical examples like the fire altars described in the royal inscriptions at Pasargadae. In the quiet aftermath, as the merchants dispersed into the shadows, one couldn't help but feel the subtle wit of it all. How these simple men, through their unwritten ways, preserved a piece of the divine in the midst of commerce. And so, with the flames still whispering their secrets, we gently turn our thoughts to the next chapter of ancient tales. In the fading glow of a Persepolis evening, where the ancient city's stone facades softened under a veil of dusk, the bazaar merchants wound their way homeward, clad in simple tunics of woven linen, dyed in earthy hues of ochre and indigo. They carried the day's burdens lightly, their sandaled feet tracing paths through narrow alleys fragrant with lingering spices. The air hung heavy, a gentle whisper of dusty warmth that settled on their skin like a familiar embrace, while distant echoes of barter faded into the quiet hum of home fires. Here, in the modest dwellings nestled against the city's grand walls, these traders turned to the quiet art of healing, drawing from the earth's bounty to mend their weary bodies and soothe their spirits. The merchants knew the rhythms of health as intimately as they knew the weight of their goods. In their homes, simple structures of mud, brick, and thatch, they gathered around low tables where bundles of herbs lay drying in the warm air. Rosemary and thyme, harvested from the hills beyond the city, released their subtle aromas with each breath, a soft perfume that mingled with the faint scent of baking bread from neighboring hearths. One merchant, his tunic frayed at the edges from the day's negotiations, would crush leaves of coriander between his fingers, the oils releasing a citrusy tang that cut through the day's accumulated dust. He moved with deliberate calm, his movements a lullaby of routine. As he steeped the herbs in clay pots over low flames, the steam rose gently, curling like smoke from a distant fire, carrying whispers of relief for aching joints and tired eyes. In these practices, rooted in the ancient wisdom of Achaemenid texts, like those attributed to the healers of Darius's court, the merchants found solace. They drew from scrolls and oral traditions that spoke of balms and infusions, remedies passed down through generations of Persian healers. A favorite was the use of chamomile. Its delicate flowers, steeped in water warmed by the sun's lingering heat, creating a brew that eased the mind's restlessness. As the merchant poured the infusion into a simple cup, the steam enveloped his face, a soft veil that carried the herb's earthy sweetness, calming the pulse of the day's chaos. The air in the room grew thick with this gentle vapor, a sensory balm that wrapped around him like a cloak, muting the distant calls of night birds and the soft rustle of wind through the city's palms. Yet not all ailments yielded easily to these familiar cures. The merchants often spoke in hushed tones of deeper mysteries, of recipes long lost to the sands of time. It was said that in the early days of the empire, when Cyrus the Great expanded his realm, certain healers possessed knowledge of potent elixirs, mixtures of rare resins, and secret roots that could mend wounds unseen and fortify the spirit against unseen foes. These formulas, inscribed on fragile parchments that crumbled like autumn leaves, had vanished during the tumults of conquest and trade. One evening, as a merchant sat by his hearth grinding fennel seeds into a paste for a minor fever, he paused, his eyes drifting to the shadows dancing on the walls. The air, heavy with the fennel's licorice scent and the faint grit of dust from his tunic, seemed to hold echoes of those forgotten ways. Perhaps, he mused with a subtle smile, the winds that carry the desert sands have buried them for a reason, guarding their power like a hidden spring. Such thoughts lent a quiet intrigue to their daily rituals, a thread of wonder woven into the fabric of their lives. The merchants, ever practical, turned to what remained: infusions of mint to clear the breath, its cool sharpness cutting through the warm, dusty air like a gentle stream. They applied poultices of aloe, sourced from the arid gardens outside the city, to soothe sunburned skin. The gel's slippery texture a cool contrast to the dry heat that clung to their tunics. In the dim light of oil lamps, the glow flickered across their faces, illuminating the careful precision of their work. The scent of the aloe mingled with the earthy undertones of the room, a symphony of senses that evoked the vast landscapes. They traversed mountains where wild herbs grew unchecked, and valleys where rivers whispered ancient secrets, historical accounts from Achaemenid sources, such as fragments of medical treatises found in the ruins of Pasargadae, emphasized the balance of elements in health. The merchants embodied this philosophy, using herbs not merely as cures, but as guardians of harmony. For instance, they might combine sage, with its robust, woody aroma, with honey gathered from highland bees, creating a syrup that coated the throat and eased the coughs brought by the seasonal winds. As one merchant stirred the mixture, the honey's golden hue caught the firelight, and the sage's pungent scent filled the air, a comforting presence that dulled the edge of fatigue. These practices were more than mere routine. They were a quiet rebellion against the hardships of trade, a way to reclaim the body's resilience amid the relentless pace of bazaar life. In their homes, the merchants shared these traditions with family, passing knowledge from father to son in voices soft as the evening breeze. A young apprentice, his tunic still crisp from the day's learning, watched as an elder demonstrated the art of distillation, using simple copper vessels to extract essences from lavender. The process released a floral mist that lingered in the air, its calming fragrance weaving through the room like a thread of silk. Yet underlying these teachings was the enigma of the lost recipes, a shadow that added depth to their craft. Whispers persisted of a legendary elixir, perhaps involving the rarest of resins from distant lands, that could restore vitality to the aged or mend the invisible scars of sorrow. The merchants pondered this in quiet moments, their expressions touched by a wry amusement at the caprices of history, as if the secrets had slipped away like grains of sand through their fingers. Sensory details enriched these evenings, turning simple acts into rituals of peace. The feel of cool clay under their palms as they molded poultices, the soft crackle of drying herbs in baskets, the distant murmur of the city's fountains, all conspired to create a haven from the outer world. One might inhale deeply, the air alive with the peppery bite of mustard seeds ground for a warming rub, its heat seeping into tired muscles like a gentle tide. These moments, bathed in the golden haze of lamplight, offered a respite that transcended the physical, touching on the soul's quietude. As the night deepened, the merchants reflected on the broader tapestry of Achaemenid healing. Texts from the era, such as those referencing the physicians of Xerxes's court, highlighted the use of garlic for its purifying properties, its sharp, pungent odor cutting through the musty air of their homes. They applied it liberally, the garlic's essence lingering on their skin and in the room, a stark reminder of nature's dual gifts of strength and subtlety. Through such practices, they maintained not just health, but a connection to the empire's vast heritage, where medicine intertwined with philosophy and faith. The mystery of the lost recipes, however, remained a constant undercurrent, a subtle puzzle that fueled their curiosity. In idle conversations, they speculated with a light-hearted wit, wondering if the formulas had had been carried off by traders to foreign shores, or buried in forgotten tombs, perhaps one might say with a faint smile, as the steam from a herbal bath curled around him. They await discovery in the whispers of the wind, just beyond our reach. This enigma, far from distressing, added a layer of enchantment to their world, a reminder that some knowledge, like the stars above Persepolis, was meant to inspire rather than be fully grasped. As the merchants settled into their rest, the air growing still and cool, they felt the weight of the day lift, replaced by a profound serenity. The herbs, with their myriad scents and textures, had done their work, weaving a net of calm around their lives, and as sleep beckoned, they turned their thoughts to the morrow, where the bazaar's calls would resume. But for now, in the quiet of their homes, health and mystery intertwined like the threads of their tunics. Yet, even as this chapter closes, one cannot help but glimpse the horizon, where new tales of the empire's wonders await, ready to unfold in the light of dawn, in the hushed glow of a Persepolis dawn, where the ancient city's stone arches cradled the first whispers of day. The bazaar stirred like a dream, half remembered. Amid the terraced streets of the Achaemenid Empire, merchant families wove their lives into the fabric of trade, and their children, small figures in simple tunics of linen dyed soft ochre, became threads in that intricate pattern. These young ones, barely taller than the laden baskets they bore, moved through the market's labyrinth with a quiet purpose, their roles shaping the rhythm of commerce in ways that echoed through the ages. The children of the bazaar merchants in 5th century BCE Persepolis were not mere helpers, but essential links in the chain of exchange, their small hands handling goods that spanned the known world. A boy named Ardashir, perhaps 8 summers old, would rise with the sun's gentle ascent, his tunic brushing against his knees as he gathered clay jars of cumin and coriander from the family's storeroom. The air carried the warm, earthy scent of spice dust, fine particles that settled on his skin like a second layer, soft and tingling against his fingertips. He learned early the art of balance, cradling baskets on his head or slung across his shoulders, his footsteps padding softly on the packed earth paths that wound between stalls. Each step released a faint whisper, the dust of trodden herbs rising in lazy swirls, mingling with the distant calls of vendors greeting the morning. In those days, as recorded in the clay tablets of Achaemenid scribes, children like Ardashir assisted in the flow of goods from the empire's vast networks. The Persians, under Darius the Great, had forged roads that brought silks from the east and metals from the north, and it fell to the young to ensure these treasures reached the bazaar's heart. A girl, Roshan, with braids tied back to keep them from catching on rough woolen bundles, might carry bolts of dyed fabric, her tunic's hem fluttering like a silent flag, the weight pressed gently against her. Yet she moved with a grace born of necessity, her bare feet leaving faint impressions in the cool, grainy soil. The market's air was alive with sensory whispers. The subtle rustle of textiles brushing together, the warm aroma of baking bread from nearby ovens, and the occasional chime of bronze scales as merchants weighed their wares. These children embodied the quiet continuity of family trade, their roles documented in the sparse, but telling records of Persepolis's administrative archives. The Achaemenid system, as noted in the Persepolis fortification tablets, relied on familial labor to sustain the empire's economic pulse, and young ones were trained from an early age to recognize quality and value. Ardashir, for instance, would inspect dates for ripeness, his fingers tracing the smooth, sticky surfaces, the sweetness lingering on his lips like a secret shared with the fruit itself. Roshan learned to sort beads of lapis lazuli, their cool, polished forms slipping through her palms with a satisfying click. Each one a tiny portal to distant mines in the Hindu Kush. The bazaar's sounds were a lullaby in themselves. The low murmur of bartering voices, like waves lapping at the shore, and the occasional bleat of a goat tied nearby, all woven into the day's gentle cadence. Yet, amid this structured world, there lingered a mystery in the unrecorded tasks that these children undertook, shadows in the margins of history's scrolls. While the tablets detailed the movement of goods and the allocation of rations, they often glossed over the subtle, unseen contributions of the young. Perhaps Ardashir slipped away at dusk to scout for opportunistic thieves, his soft footsteps blending with the evening's hush, the spice dust on his clothes masking his scent in the alleys. Or Roshan, with her keen eyes, might have memorized the patterns of trade routes, piecing together maps from overheard conversations, her tunic's folds hiding scraps of information that no scribe ever noted. These enigmas, hinted at in the gaps of Achaemenid records, add a layer of intrigue to the children's stories, a subtle wit in how the empire's efficiency might have depended on such unacknowledged ingenuity, like a hidden current beneath a calm river. As the sun climbed higher, the children navigated the bazaar's tiers, their tunics damp with the faint perspiration of effort, the fabric clinging softly to their skin. The sensory tapestry grew richer, the metallic tang of copper coins exchanged in quick hands, the velvety touch of imported furs brushed against cheeks, and the earthy bitterness of crushed herbs ground underfoot. In one corner, Ardashir might assist in unloading a caravan's bounty, the creak of wooden carts a rhythmic counterpart to his breathing, each item placed with care to avoid bruising delicate figs. Roshan, ever observant, would arrange displays of jewelry, her fingers dancing over gold amulets etched with ancient symbols. The metal's cool weight, a quiet teacher of craftsmanship. Historical accounts, such as those from the Behistun inscription and the Elamite tablets, reveal that children in merchant families were not only laborers, but also learners, absorbing the nuances of negotiation and barter that sustained Persepolis's wealth. Yet the mystery deepens when considering the tasks that evaded record. Perhaps the children acted as informal messengers, their small stature allowing them to weave through crowds unseen, carrying whispers of market prices or pending deals. One might imagine Ardashir pausing in a shadowed alcove, the spice dust on his tunic glowing faintly in the sunlight, pondering a route that no elder had mapped, his young mind piecing together the empire's secrets like a puzzle half formed in the afternoon's golden haze. As shadows lengthened across the bazaar's stones, the children found moments of respite. Roshan might sit beside a fountain, the water's soft trickle a soothing melody, dipping her hands into the cool flow to wash away the day's grime, the droplets beading on her tunic like tiny jewels. Ardashir, with a subtle wit all his own, could tease a smile from a weary merchant by mimicking the call of a bird, his voice light and playful amid the seriousness of trade. These interludes, though not explicitly noted in the records, hint at the resilience of youth, their roles extending beyond the tangible to the emotional undercurrents of family life. As evening approached, the bazaar's energy waned, the sensory details fading into memory, the last traces of spice dust settling, the final echoes of footsteps softening into silence. The children, their tunics now marked with the day's labors, returned to their homes, carrying not just goods, but the invisible threads of experience. In this way, they preserved the continuity of the Achaemenid legacy, their unrecorded mysteries adding a gentle allure to the past. Yet, as the stars began to twinkle above Persepolis, one couldn't help but wonder about the paths these young ones might have forged in secret, tasks that slipped through the scribe's ink like sand through fingers. Such thoughts lead naturally to the broader tapestry of life in the empire, where every role, seen or unseen, wove into the next chapter of history. In the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun dipped low over the rugged Zagros mountains, the merchant bazaar unfolded like a gentle whisper through the afternoon haze. Here, under vast awnings of sun-bleached linen that creaked softly in the warm breeze, Persian traders moved with the quiet rhythm of a river's flow. It was the 5th century BCE, a time when the Achaemenid Empire's wealth gathered in this sprawling marketplace, far from the echoes of royal courts or everyday toils. The air carried the faint, intoxicating scent of cinnamon and myrrh, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly turned soil from nearby fields, inviting one to linger in its embrace. The merchants themselves were figures of understated grace, clad in simple tunics of fine wool dyed in shades of deep indigo and soft ochre, the fabrics whispering against their skin as they negotiated deals. These men and women, descendants of traders who had traversed the royal road from Sardis to Susa, stood behind stalls laden with treasures from distant lands. One might see a merchant with a neatly trimmed beard, his tunic belted at the waist with a leather cord, carefully arranging bolts of silk from China silk that shimmered like moonlight on water, its threads cool and smooth to the touch. The stall beside him held stacks of amber beads, their resinous scent evoking ancient forests, while another displayed rows of copper vessels, polished to a warm glow that reflected the golden light filtering through the awnings. As the day progressed, the bazaar hummed with a soothing cadence, the kind that lulled the mind into a peaceful reverie. Footsteps padded softly on the packed earth paths, worn smooth by generations of barter and exchange, and the occasional creak of wooden beams overhead added a rhythmic lull, like the distant sigh of waves against a shore. Vendors called out in measured tones, their voices low and melodic, never harsh, as if sharing secrets rather than hawking goods. Fine spices from the east, one might murmur, holding up a pouch of cardamom pods that released a spicy, floral aroma with each gentle shake, drawing passers-by into a world of subtle delights. The air was alive with these scents, a tapestry woven from the pungent tang of dried fish brought in from the Persian Gulf, and the sweet, honeyed notes of dates piled high in woven baskets amid the stalls. The merchants moved with a wit as dry as the desert winds that occasionally swept through. One trader, an older man with eyes like polished onyx, might lean over his counter with a faint smile, saying, "This turquoise, my friend, has seen more kings than I have seasons take it, and perhaps it will share its stories with you." His tunic, frayed at the edges from years of wear, spoke of a life dedicated to the road, yet he handled each transaction with the precision of a poet choosing words. Around him, the bazaar's layout followed the ancient designs uncovered in Achaemenid excavation reports, where archaeologists have pieced together the grid like arrangement of stalls from the remnants of stone foundations and clay tablets. These reports, drawn from sites like the Apadana Palace ruins, reveal how the bazaar was organized into quadrants for different goods. Textiles in one corner, metals in another, creating a harmonious flow that minimized chaos. Yet, woven into this serene tapestry was a quiet mystery, one that lingered like the faint echo of a forgotten melody. The lost bazaar designs, as hinted at in fragmentary inscriptions from the time of Darius I, spoke of elaborate blueprints that once guided the marketplace's expansion. These designs, never fully recovered from the sands that buried Persepolis after Alexander's conquest, were said to include intricate patterns of arches and courtyards etched in cuneiform on clay cylinders. Imagine, if you will, the subtle intrigue of a merchant pausing to trace his fingers over a worn stone tablet, its surface etched with faded lines that might once have mapped hidden vaults or secret trade routes. Whispers among the traders suggested that these designs held keys to undiscovered riches, perhaps caches of lapis lazuli or gold ingots, lost to time's gentle erosion. It was a mystery that added a layer of soft enchantment to the bazaar, much like the way the evening shadows played across the stalls, casting elongated forms that danced in the fading light. As the sun climbed higher, the sensory symphony deepened. The warmth of the air carried the metallic tang of freshly hammered bronze from a smith's nearby forge. Its rhythmic taps blending into a lullaby like beat that soothed the soul. Merchants in their tunics, sleeves rolled to reveal sun-kissed arms, handled goods with careful reverence, lifting a jar of olive oil to let its rich, grassy scent waft upward, or unfurling a carpet woven with threads of wool that felt soft as a lamb's ear under one's palm. One could almost hear the faint rustle of palm fronds overhead, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind, while the distant bleat of a goat from a herder's pen added a pastoral note to the scene. These details, drawn from the meticulous accounts in Achaemenid reports, paint a picture of a marketplace that was not just a hub of commerce, but a living breath of the empire's vitality. In one corner, a group of merchants gathered around a low table, their tunics brushing against the ground as they shared a moment of respite. They sipped from clay cups of diluted wine, its tart sweetness cutting through the spice-laden air, and exchanged tales with a subtle wit that never raised voices. "Ah, this silk," one might say with a knowing grin, "is lighter than a king's promise, yet twice as enduring." Such banter, light and fleeting, reflected the resilience of these traders, who navigated the empire's vast networks with the ease of birds in flight. Historical examples from excavation findings, like the Persepolis fortification tablets, detail how these merchants managed supplies for the royal court, ensuring that even the humblest stall contributed to the empire's grandeur, without ever stepping into the shadows of palaces or routines. The mystery of the lost designs wove through these interactions, a thread of curiosity that never overwhelmed the calm. Perhaps, as one merchant adjusted his tunic and gazed at the sky, he pondered the ancient architects who had envisioned this space, men whose names were lost, their blueprints scattered like autumn leaves. Excavation reports from the 1930, led by scholars like Hersfeld, uncovered partial sketches on baked bricks, suggesting innovations in irrigation channels that kept the bazaar cool and verdant, with trickling water features that murmured softly through the stalls. These elements, now mere echoes, added a poignant depth to the scene, inviting reflection on the impermanence of human endeavors. As the afternoon waned, the bazaar's energy softened further, the creaking awnings now swaying gently under a breeze, carrying the cool hint of approaching dusk. Merchants began to wrap their goods, folding silks with care, their fingers tracing the fabric's intricate patterns, and the scents of the day lingered, a comforting blanket of memory. In this moment, one could feel the bazaar's timeless pulse, a soothing reminder of life's quiet continuities. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the stalls, the scene transitioned seamlessly toward the whispers of the night, where other stories might unfold in the empire's vast tapestry. In the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun dipped low over the vast Achaemenid plateau. The bazaar unfolded like a gentle whisper through the afternoon haze. Merchants in simple tunics of woven linen, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and indigo, moved with a quiet rhythm among the stalls. The air carried the faint scent of cumin and myrrh, mingling with the soft rustle of fabrics as they bartered goods from distant lands. Here, in the 5th century BCE, trade was not a frantic rush, but a measured dance, each negotiation a thread in the empire's grand tapestry. One merchant, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of travel, stood behind a low wooden table laden with bolts of silk from the eastern satrapies. The fabric gleamed softly in the filtered light, its surface catching the occasional breeze that stirred dust from the packed earth floor. He eyed a potential buyer, a fellow trader in a similar garment, its sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-darkened arms. "What value do you place on threads spun from the Indus?" the merchant asked, his voice a low murmur, laced with the subtle wit of one who knew the weight of words. The buyer paused, fingers tracing the silk's edge, feeling the cool smoothness against his skin. Coins clinked faintly in a leather pouch at his waist, a sound like distant chimes as he considered the offer. In those days, the bazaar's trade practices were rooted in the meticulous records of the Achaemenid scribes, drawing from tablets unearthed in the ruins of Persepolis itself. These clay documents, inscribed with cuneiform, detailed exchanges of goods barley from the fertile plains, lapis lazuli from the mountains of Bactria, and aromatic resins that perfumed the air. Merchants adhered to a system of weights and measures, their bronze scales balanced with precision under the watchful eyes of overseers appointed by the court. A transaction might begin with the merchant lifting a handful of spices, their pungent aroma rising like a soft veil, inviting the buyer to lean closer and inhale the earthy warmth. This saffron, harvested under the full moon, he might say with a faint smile, carries the essence of distant fields, far beyond the reach of common markets. Negotiations unfolded slowly, a calming cadence that echoed the empire's vast expanse. The merchants, often veterans of the Silk Road caravans, employed a blend of persuasion and tradition. They spoke in the old Persian dialects, their words flowing like the Tigris River, steady and unhurried. A buyer might counter with an offer, his voice barely above a whisper. As the two men leaned in over the stall, the clatter of pottery jars, filled with olive oil from the western provinces, provided a rhythmic backdrop. Each gentle tap a reminder of the goods' journey across arid deserts. Dust from the goods, fine particles clinging to bundles of wool, or stacks of ingots settled on their tunics, a soft layer that spoke of authenticity and age. Yet, amid this orderly exchange, a quiet mystery lingered in the shadows of the bazaar. The unrecorded trade logs, while the Achaemenid administration documented much through their imperial archives, not every deal found its way onto clay or parchment. Some merchants, with a knowing glance and a subtle nod, engaged in transactions that slipped through the cracks of official scrutiny. Perhaps it was a pouch of rare pearls, smuggled from the Persian Gulf, exchanged for uncut emeralds under the cover of dusk. The air grew cooler then, carrying a whisper of wind through the stalls, as if the bazaar itself conspired to keep secrets. These off-the-books dealings, hinted at in fragmentary accounts from Herodotus and the Persepolis fortification tablets, added an undercurrent of intrigue, a subtle puzzle for historians to unravel centuries later. As the sun arced higher, casting a golden glow over the market, another merchant unfurled a carpet woven with intricate patterns of geometric designs. The wool fibers, dyed with natural pigments from crushed berries and minerals, released a faint, earthy scent as he spread it out. "See how the threads interlock," he said softly, his words carrying a touch of wit, "like the alliances of our great king." The buyer knelt to run his hands over the surface, feeling the slight unevenness that spoke of handcrafted perfection. Negotiations here involved not just price, but story. The carpet's origin from nomadic weavers in the Zagros Mountains, its colors evoking the palette of the empire's diverse lands. Scales were brought forth, their metal arms creaking gently as weights were adjusted, ensuring fairness in every measure. Sensory details wove through each interaction, creating a tapestry of experience. The clinking of silver derricks, the empire's standard coin, echoed like a lullaby against wooden counters, each strike a soft punctuation to a bargain sealed. Dusty goods jars of dates, sticky with sweetness, bundles of cedar wood exuding a resinous aroma, invited touch and taste, drawing buyers into a world of tangible history. One might sample a fig, its ripe flesh bursting with flavor under the merchant's watchful eye, the juice leaving a subtle stain on fingers as a reminder of the transaction's bond. Trade practices extended beyond mere exchange. They reflected the Achaemenid emphasis on prosperity and connectivity. Merchants drew from records like those in the Elamite tablets, which chronicled shipments of grain and wine to sustain the royal court. A negotiation might involve citing precedents, such as the standardized tariffs set by Darius I, ensuring that prices remained equitable across the empire. With a calm demeanor, a merchant could reference these, his voice steady as he pointed to a ledger, its pages yellowed and frayed. As the great king decreed, he might say, with a hint of playful gravity, "Let balance prevail in all things." The buyer, impressed by such knowledge, would nod, the air between them filled with the subtle fragrance of frankincense burning in a nearby brazier. Yet the mystery of unrecorded logs persisted, a gentle enigma that added depth to the bazaar's rhythm. Whispers among the stalls suggested that some merchants kept private tallies, etched on scraps of papyrus or memorized in verse, to evade taxes or protect sensitive alliances. This shadow trade, alluded to in the sparse accounts of Greek travelers like Xenophon, involved goods like forbidden wines or exotic animals. Their paths lost to time, the wind might carry a faint rustle of unseen exchanges, leaving observers to wonder at the untold stories woven into the empire's fabric. It was a mystery that, even now, invites contemplation, as if the dust of Persepolis still guards its secrets. As evening approached, the bazaar softened into twilight, the merchants wrapping their goods with care. The last negotiations faded like echoes, the clinking coins giving way to the call of night birds. In this moment, one could imagine the threads of trade extending outward, connecting Persepolis to the world beyond. And as the stars emerged, twinkling like distant treasures, the scene transitioned seamlessly, whispering of journeys yet to unfold in the empire's vast domain. Word count 1,520 in the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun dipped low over the terraced palaces, and the air carried whispers of distant mountains. The bazaars stirred with a quiet rhythm of celebration. It was the time of the merchant festivals, a custom woven into the fabric of Achaemenid life, far from the grand courts of Darius or Xerxes. Here, amid the labyrinthine stalls and arched gateways, traders in tunics of embroidered silk and dyed wool gathered under the fading light, their faces softened by the day's end. The air was warm, scented with the faint spice of cumin and the earthy tang of packed earth, as if the very ground remembered the caravans that had crossed vast deserts to reach this place. These merchants, descendants of those who bartered along the royal road, donned their festive attire with a deliberate grace. Their tunics, fringed with threads of gold and azure, caught the glow of oil lamps that flickered like sleepy stars along the bazaar walls. Each garment told a story of trade routes from the Indus to the Aegean. Yet tonight, they were not merely symbols of commerce, but emblems of shared respite. As twilight deepened, the merchants moved with unhurried steps, their laughter a gentle murmur that blended with the rustle of fabrics and the soft clink of silver ornaments. One could imagine the weight of their days lifted, if only for a night, in this enclave of stone and shadow. The festivals began with the subtle pulse of drums, their echoes rolling through the narrow alleys like a distant heartbeat, not the thunderous booms of battle drums, but a soothing cadence, low and rhythmic, that invited the ear rather than demanded it. A group of elder traders, their hands calloused from years of handling gems and textiles, sat in a circle under a canopy of woven reeds. They tapped the drums with mallets wrapped in soft leather, producing notes that wove through the air like threads in a loom. Nearby, younger merchants swayed gently, their tunics swirling in the lamplight, the fabric whispering against their skin. The glow from the lamps cast elongated shadows on the ground, painting the bazaar in hues of amber and rose, as if the stones themselves were alive with memory. Amid the festivities, the scent of roasting meats and fresh breads wafted from makeshift hearths, skewers of lamb, marinated in herbs gathered from the Zagros foothills, turned slowly over low flames, their juices hissing softly, the aroma mingled with the sweetness of dates and figs, piled high on trays, passed from hand to hand. A merchant with a beard streaked in silver offered a morsel to a companion, his voice a calm lilt as he remarked on the fruit's journey from palm groves far to the south. See how the sun ripens them, he might say with a hint of wit, much like our own ventures, slow and sure, yet full of surprise. The food was shared without haste, each bite savored in the cool evening breeze, a simple pleasure that grounded the revelers in the tangible world of trade. As the night progressed, the bazaar's courtyards filled with displays of skill and artistry. Jugglers balanced bolts of cloth on slender poles, their movements fluid and precise, the fabrics fluttering like banners in a gentle wind. Strings of beads, crafted from lapis and carnelian, caught the lamp glow, scattering flecks of blue and red across the faces of onlookers. The merchants applauded with soft claps, their eyes crinkling in amusement, for there was a subtle wit in these performances, a nod to the unpredictability of markets, where a single trade could turn fortune on its head. Yet the tone remained light, almost dreamlike, as if the festival were a lullaby sung to the weary souls of commerce. In one corner, away from the main throng, a group of artisans demonstrated the craft of dyeing fabrics. Pots bubbled with pigments derived from madder roots and indigo leaves, releasing vapors that tinted the air with a faint, earthy perfume. A young merchant dipped a tunic into a vat, the dye seeping into the wool like secrets into stone. Here, the festival took on a more introspective air, with conversations drifting to the finer points of their trade, the precise blend of colors that mimicked the Achaemenid artisans recorded in palace reliefs, or the threads that had adorned the robes of satraps in years past. These exchanges were not boasts, but gentle reflections, shared in voices as smooth as the silk they handled. Yet woven through the celebrations was a quiet mystery, one that lingered like an unspoken word in the night air. The unrecorded rites of these festivals, passed down through generations, yet absent from the clay tablets and inscriptions of Persepolis, added an enigmatic layer to the merriment. Historians, drawing from the Achaemenid archives, speak of public feasts and displays, but certain customs remained shrouded, known only to the merchants themselves. Perhaps it was a gesture, a hidden symbol etched into the ground with a stick, or a phrase murmured under breath as the drums fell silent. One elder might trace a pattern in the dust, its meaning lost to outsiders, evoking the unknown paths of ancient trade routes. This mystery, subtle and intriguing, hinted at a deeper wisdom, a wit in the way these traders guarded their traditions against the winds of empire. It was not tied to divine rituals or communal oaths, but to the private lore of the bazaar, a gentle enigma that invited curiosity without demand. The lamps burned lower, their glow softening the edges of the scene, as dancers took to the open spaces with movements as fluid as the Tigris in flood. They twirled in their tunics, the fabric brushing against the cool stone floors, the sound of anklets, small bells of bronze and silver chimed softly, a melody that harmonized with the drum's persistent beat. One could feel the air thicken with the warmth of bodies in motion, the faint perspiration carrying the scent of sandalwood oil. It was a display not of extravagance, but of enduring spirit, much like the merchants who navigated the empire's vast networks, their resilience etched in every step. As the festival reached its zenith, stories unfolded around the hearths. A trader might recount a journey across the high plateaus, where winds whispered secrets of forgotten markets, his words laced with a subtle humor that poked at the follies of overzealous buyers. Ah, the buyer who chased a mirage of profit, he would say, his voice a soothing drawl, only to find his gold heavier than his camel's load. These tales, drawn from the annals of Achaemenid trade, as recorded in Persepolis, painted pictures of abundance and adventure, yet always with a detached calm, focusing on the lessons learned rather than the hardships endured. The night deepened, and the bazaar grew quieter, the drums fading to a distant echo. The merchants, their tunics now dusted with the night's fine particles, began to disperse, carrying with them the warmth of shared moments. In the final hours, as the lamps dimmed and the air cooled, one might glimpse a final, right, a silent exchange of tokens, perhaps a carved seal or a knotted cord, its purpose as elusive as the stars above. This unrecorded element, a thread of mystery in the tapestry of their celebrations, left a lingering question, a gentle puzzle for the ages. And so, as the last echoes settled and the bazaar returned to its watchful slumber, our thoughts drift toward what lies beyond new paths and unseen horizons, where other stories await in the quiet folds of history. In the fading glow of a Persepolis evening, where the ancient city's terraced walls cradled the whispers of the wind, the homes of bazaar merchants stood as quiet sanctuaries amid the day's clamor. Here, in the inner courtyards of mud brick dwellings, women moved with a grace that seemed woven into the very fabric of Achaemenid life, dressed in simple tunics of linen and wool, dyed in earthy hues of ochre and indigo. They tended to the rhythms of their households, their roles as vital as the trade routes that linked empires. The air carried the soft rustle of cloth against skin, a gentle sound like leaves stirring in a distant garden, as these women prepared goods that would soon grace the bazaar stalls. Their days began before the sun crested the Zagros Mountains, in rooms lit by the warm flicker of oil lamps. A woman named Perissa, her tunic's sleeves rolled to reveal sun-kissed arms, knelt by a low table scattered with skeins of dyed yarn. She worked methodically, her fingers tracing patterns that echoed the intricate designs of Achaemenid tapestries, patterns passed down through generations of merchant families. The yarn, spun from the wool of Highland sheep, carried a faint, comforting scent of lanolin and dried herbs, mingling with the earthy aroma of clay pots nearby. As she twisted threads into cords for belts or sashes, the firelight danced across her face, casting shadows that softened the lines of labor etched by years of unseen effort. In these homes, the women's tasks were the unseen threads binding the family's prosperity. They oversaw the preparation of spices and unguents, drawing from storerooms filled with cinnamon bark and myrrh resins imported from distant lands. One might envision a woman like Roshan, her tunic's hem brushing the cool stone floor, grinding cumin seeds in a mortar with a pestle worn smooth by constant use. The rhythmic thud echoed softly, a lullaby to the household, accompanied by the spicy fragrance that filled the air like a gentle mist. These preparations ensured that the family's goods reached the bazaar in perfect form, ready for the merchants' negotiations under the vast arches of Persepolis. Yet, amid this daily rhythm, there lingered a quiet mystery in the unrecorded aspects of their work. Historical tablets from the Achaemenid archives, inscribed in cuneiform on clay, speak of women's contributions to household economies, but they often gloss over the subtler tasks that defined their influence. Perhaps it was the way they bartered small favors with neighboring families, exchanging a vial of scented oil for a handful of dates. Transactions that never appeared in official ledgers, or the secret blends of herbs they infused into textiles, creating dyes that resisted fading longer than any recorded formula. A knowledge guarded like a whispered secret in the night. The air in their courtyards, heavy with the scent of jasmine blooming under the stars, hinted at these enigmas, as if the very walls held stories that time had not captured. As twilight deepened, the women gathered around hearth fires, their tunics glowing in the soft, amber light. The fire's crackle was a soothing murmur, like the distant flow of the Pulvar River. As they mended garments or prepared parcels for the morning market, one might picture a mother teaching her daughter-in-law the art of weaving. Her voice, a calm cadence, amid the play of shadows. The wool slipped through their fingers, cool and slightly coarse, each pull of the loom a deliberate act that transformed raw materials into valued commodities. In Achaemenid society, as noted in the royal inscriptions of Darius, women of merchant families held property and managed finances, their roles extending beyond the home to influence trade decisions, though often in ways that left no trace in the grand histories. The sensory world of these women was one of subtle harmonies, where the cool touch of water from clay jars contrasted with the warmth of baking bread in clay ovens. They kneaded dough for flatbreads that would accompany the family's meals, the dough's elasticity yielding under their palms like a gentle sigh. The scent of yeast and barley filled the space, a comforting aroma that spoke of sustenance and continuity. In the quieter moments, as the sun dipped low, they might arrange dried flowers or herbs into small bundles, their fingers brushing against petals soft as silk, a task that blended utility with a touch of beauty. These acts, drawn from the social records of the era, reflected the women's integral role in maintaining the family status, their contributions as essential as the silver derricks that changed hands in the bazaar. Yet the mystery persisted, a faint undercurrent in the fabric of their lives. What of the decisions made in the dim light of evening, when women like Parisa consulted ancient family scrolls, advising on trade routes or pricing strategies that official accounts attributed solely to men? The Achaemenid reliefs at Naksh-e-Rustam depict royal women in positions of honor, suggesting a broader influence that extended to merchant classes. But the details dissolve into shadow. Perhaps they orchestrated alliances through discreet exchanges, their tunics whispering secrets as they moved through the courtyards. The firelight, flickering across the room, cast elongated shadows that seemed to dance with unspoken knowledge, a subtle wit in the way history overlooked their cunning. In the cool of night, when the city's sounds faded to a distant hum, the women retired to rest, their tunics folded neatly beside low beds. The air grew still, carrying only the faint rustle of linens and the lingering scent of smoke from the dying fire. They might reflect on the day's labors, a calm satisfaction in the knowledge that their efforts sustained the family's legacy. Historical examples from the Persepolis fortification tablets, which record disbursements of goods, hint at women's involvement in resource management, yet leave gaps that invite wonder. Was it their hand that ensured the precise weighing of spices, or their intuition that foresaw market shifts? These unrecorded tasks formed a quiet enigma, a puzzle woven into the tapestry of Achaemenid life. As dawn approached, the cycle began anew, with the first light filtering through lattice windows to illuminate the tunics hung ready for the day. The women rose, their movements as fluid as the wind through the date palms, preparing once more for the bazaar's demands. In this world of sensory richness, the soft glow of lamps, the earthy taste of fresh baked bread, the cool press of stone underfoot, they embodied resilience and grace, their roles a testament to the enduring spirit of Persepolis. Through it all, a subtle wit colored their existence, a gentle irony in how their vital contributions slipped through the fingers of history like sand. For in the calm cadence of their days, amid the rustling fabrics and firelit shadows, lay the essence of a society built on unseen strengths. And as this tale of merchant women's roles draws to a close, one might ponder the next chapter, where other facets of Achaemenid life await their turn in the soft light of memory. In the fading light of Persepolis evening, where the ancient city's stone facades softened into shadows, a group of merchants gathered in the heart of the bustling bazaar. The air carried the faint scent of cumin and baked clay, mingling with the earthy aroma of smoldering fires that dotted the open spaces. These men, clad in simple tunics of wool and linen, dyed in earthy hues, settled around the flames, their faces illuminated by the gentle flicker that danced like whispers of forgotten dreams. It was a ritual born of long days bartering spices and silks, a moment when the weight of commerce gave way to the rhythm of tales spun from memory and myth. The merchants, their voices low and melodic, began their recitations as the sun dipped below the distant Zagros Mountains. One elder, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of travel along the royal road, leaned forward, his words flowing like a river through a parched land. In the days of Cyrus the Great, he murmured, a caravan master outwitted the winds of the desert, guiding his laden camels through storms that swallowed the stars. The crackle of logs breaking apart punctuated his story, a soft symphony that blended with the rustle of nearby palm fronds swaying in the cool breeze. The fire's warmth enveloped them, chasing away the chill that settled with twilight, while sparks rose lazily into the darkening sky, evoking the glitter of distant treasures. Around the circle, others nodded, their eyes half closed in the hypnotic glow. A younger merchant, his tunic adorned with faint embroidery from a distant trade route, picked up the thread. His voice carried a subtle lilt, like the strum of a distant lute, as he described heroes of the Achaemenid courts navigating intrigue and adventure. Picture the halls of Susa, he said, where a clever advisor turned a simple bargain into a kingdom's salvation, outsmarting rivals with words sharper than any blade. The scent of roasting dates from a nearby brazier wafted over, sweet and inviting, drawing listeners deeper into the narrative. Embers popped softly, releasing a resinous fragrance that recalled the cedar forests of the empire's northern reaches, and the merchant's hands gestured gently, tracing invisible paths through the air. These tales, drawn from the oral traditions preserved in fragments of Achaemenid literature, spoke of everyday cunning and resilience, far removed from the grand epics of conquest. Historical records, such as those etched into the Behistun inscription and the clay tablets of Persepolis, hinted at such stories, where merchants were not mere traders, but keepers of wisdom passed down through generations. One account, whispered among the flames, told of a trader who, during the reign of Darius I, uncovered a hidden route through the mountains, evading tolls and bandits with ingenuity alone. The fire's light played across their faces, casting elongated shadows that seemed to illustrate the tales, while the soft murmur of voices created a cocoon of sound, muffling the distant calls of night birds. As the stories unfolded, the mystery of lost oral tales wove through the air like an unseen thread. Many narratives, once vibrant in the bazaars of old, had vanished with the winds of time, their details eroded by the passage of centuries. The merchants spoke of this enigma with a gentle reverence, noting how certain tales, perhaps those of a legendary merchant who bartered for secrets in the courts of Xerxes, had slipped into oblivion. We grasp at shadows, one said softly, his voice barely rising above the fire's whisper. For scrolls and tablets tell only part of what was shared under these very stars. This loss added a poignant layer to their gatherings, a subtle reminder that not all knowledge could be etched in stone or clay. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint tang of dew settling on the bazaar's packed earth, and the flames flickered as if echoing the fragility of memory. Yet in this calm exchange, there was a quiet wit, a spark of humor that lightened the weight of history. A merchant with a twinkling eye might interject, and so the foolhardy trader thought his donkey wiser than the king's advisors, only to find his path blocked by a single stubborn rock, drawing soft chuckles that rippled like the fire's glow. These moments of levity, rooted in the everyday absurdities of trade, kept the tales alive, blending instruction with amusement. The sensory world around them enriched each word. The warm press of the ground beneath their seated forms, the occasional crack of a log splitting to release a burst of fragrant smoke, and the distant hum of the city settling into night, drawing from Achaemenid records. The stories often mirrored the empire's vast networks, where merchants traversed from the Indus to the Aegean, carrying not just goods, but tales of encounters and lessons. One recitation evoked the aroma of saffron from the eastern provinces, describing how a trader named in ancient ledgers used his wits to navigate a sandstorm, his caravan emerging unscathed, as if guided by unseen forces. The fire's heat radiated outward, wrapping the listeners in a comforting embrace, while the soft voices wove a tapestry of sound that seemed to lull the very stars into listening. As the night deepened, the merchants' tales turned to more introspective themes, touching on the consequences of choices made in the shadows of power. In a detached tone, they recounted how a once prosperous trader, documented in Persepolis's administrative archives, faced ruin not through battle, but through a misplaced trust. His downfall, a quiet fade into obscurity. No graphic details marred the narrative. Instead, the focus lingered on the lingering echoes, like the final sigh of the flames as they dimmed. The air grew heavy with the scent of cooling ashes, and the soft rustle of tunics shifting in the dark added a rhythmic undercurrent to the words. Through it all, the mystery persisted, a gentle enigma that invited reflection. What tales had been lost in the great fires that once ravaged Persepolis, or in the migrations of peoples across the empire? The merchants pondered this as the fire waned, their voices fading to a murmur. Perhaps, one suggested, with a subtle smile, those stories live on in the wind, waiting for ears attuned to their whisper. The scene was one of serene continuity, the bazaar stones holding the echoes of centuries, even as the empire's golden age slipped into history. In this way, the tradition endured, a soothing balm for weary souls. The crackling logs, now softer, released a final waft of pine resin, mingling with the cool night air. As the last tale concluded, the merchants rose slowly, their tunics brushing against the ground, and dispersed into the shadows, leaving the fire to die into embers. Yet the stories lingered, a bridge to the unseen, whispering of worlds beyond. And so, as the night embraced Persepolis, we turn our thoughts to what follows, where new paths await in the dawn's quiet light. Word count 1,500 in the heart of ancient Persepolis, where the sun dipped low over the weathered stone walls. The bazaar unfolded like a gentle whisper through the afternoon haze. The air carried the faint scent of cumin and myrrh, mingling with the earthy dust that rose from the packed earth paths. Here, in the 5th century BCE, under the vast Achaemenid Empire, merchants in simple tunics of woven linen moved with a rhythmic grace, their voices a soft cadence amid the market's quiet hum. No grand palaces loomed nearby, for this was a world of everyday exchange. Far from the opulent halls of nobility, traders from distant lands arrived with caravans, their camels resting in the shade, and the scene unfolded with the serenity of a river's flow. Each negotiation a subtle dance of words and gestures. The merchants, clad in tunics dyed in muted earth tones, stood behind stalls laden with goods from across the empire's vast trade networks. Achaemenid records, etched on clay tablets and inscribed in cuneiform, spoke of these exchanges: silk from the eastern satrapies, aromatic resins from the southern coasts, and fine metals forged in the northern hills. Yet, as one merchant leaned forward to inspect a bolt of fabric, his fingers tracing the threads with deliberate care, there was an undercurrent of mystery in the air, a hint of deals that slipped through the cracks of history's gaze. These unrecorded bargains, whispered in the shadows of tent flaps, held secrets that shaped fortunes, but left no trace in the official ledgers. A quiet enigma that lingered like the fading echo of a distant flute. Imagine the scene. A trader from the Indus Valley, his face weathered by long journeys, unfurling a length of silk that shimmered in the softening light. The merchant, a local from Persepolis, with a tunic frayed at the edges from years of wear, examined it closely, his breath steady and calm. "This weave," he murmured, his voice a lullaby of appraisal, "holds the memory of distant looms, yet its price must reflect the sands it crossed." The silk rustled softly, a whisper against his calloused hands, while nearby, coins clinked in a leather pouch, their metallic chime a soothing rhythm that blended with the market's ambient pulse. Dust from the fabrics settled on the ground, carrying the faint, warm scent of aged wool and sun-baked threads, evoking a sense of timeless continuity. Negotiations proceeded with a wit as subtle as a breeze through the date palms. The trader, perhaps from the western edges of the empire, countered with a smile that crinkled his eyes, saying, "My friend, this amber from the Baltic shores glows like captured sunlight, but it demands a fair exchange for the risks of the road." The merchant nodded, his tunic shifting with the motion, and replied in a tone laced with gentle humor, "Ah, but sunlight is free in Persepolis. your amber must compete with our endless days. Around them, other interactions wove a tapestry of commerce. A woman in a similar tunic bartering for spices. The air filled with the spicy aroma of cardamom that teased the senses. Or a young apprentice weighing copper ingots. The metal's cool weight balanced against the warmth of the afternoon sun. Sensory details enveloped the bazaar like a comforting blanket. The clinking of coins, not harsh but melodic, as they exchanged hands in small leather sacks, created a backdrop of harmony. Fabrics hung in lazy folds, their dusty surfaces catching the light and releasing a soft, powdery fragrance that spoke of journeys over arid plains. One could almost feel the texture of a rug underfoot, its fibers worn smooth by countless steps, or hear the faint rustle of parchments where merchants jotted informal notes. Though many deals remained unspoken, preserved only in memory, these unrecorded interactions, a mystery woven into the fabric of Achaemenid trade, hinted at alliances formed in hushed tones, perhaps between rivals who shared a mutual nod over a cup of diluted wine, their agreements vanishing into the ether like smoke from a brazier as the sun arced toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the stalls. The merchants paused for a moment of respite. A trader from the eastern provinces spread out samples of lapis lazuli, the deep blue stones gleaming like fragments of the night sky. The merchant opposite him, his tunic sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-darkened arms, ran a thumb over the gem's surface, feeling its cool, smooth edge. Such beauty, he said softly, deserves a story as rich as its color. But what price for something born of mountains I have never seen? The trader chuckled lightly, a subtle wit in his response. The mountains guard their secrets, as do we. Perhaps the true value lies in what remains unsaid. Indeed, the mystery deepened here. In these exchanges, where not every detail found its way into the royal archives, Achaemenid records from Persepolis, as noted in the Behistun inscription, and various administrative tablets, detailed official tolls and tariffs, but they glossed over the personal pacts that oiled the wheels of commerce, leaving historians to ponder the shadows. The bazaar continued its gentle rhythm, with merchants moving between stalls, their tunics brushing against one another in a dance of proximity. The scent of fresh bread from a nearby oven wafted through, mingling with the metallic tang of newly minted Derek's gold coins that symbolized the empire's wealth. One could hear the soft patter of bargaining voices, each word chosen with care, like notes in a melody meant to soothe rather than startle. A child, perhaps an apprentice, carried a basket of dates, their sticky sweetness tempting passers-by, while the dusty fabrics on display invited touch, their textures a tactile poem of varied weaves and dyes. In this calm expanse, the interactions revealed the human element of trade, far removed from the grand strategies of emperors. A merchant from the southern regions, his tunic adorned with simple embroidery, negotiated for ivory tusks, the pale material cool and smooth under inspection. These pieces, he observed, have traveled farther than I ever will, yet they must find a home here. The trader nodded, his voice steady, and in that journey, unseen hands guided them packs made under starlit skies that no scribe recorded. This allusion to the unrecorded deals added a layer of intrigue, a subtle mystery that whispered of fortunes built on trust alone, distinct from the formalized routes documented in Achaemenid annals. As evening approached, the market's energy softened further, the clinking coins growing sporadic, like raindrops on a quiet roof. Merchants wrapped their goods in protective cloths, the fabrics emitting a final sigh of dust into the air. One might catch a whiff of mint tea being brewed in clay pots, its steam rising in lazy spirals, or feel the cooling breeze that signaled the day's end. The mystery of those unrecorded interactions lingered, a gentle enigma that invited reflection, perhaps a deal sealed with a handshake in the fading light, its details dissolving into the night, much like the empire's trade networks that connected worlds without leaving a complete map. Yet, even as the bazaar quieted, the threads of commerce remained, weaving toward new horizons. In the distance, the outline of Persepolis's terraces faded into twilight, a reminder that beyond these interactions lay the broader tapestry of history. And so, as the stars began to emerge, one might wonder what unseen agreements still echoed in the winds, bridging the past to what comes next. In the golden haze of a late afternoon in 5th century BCE Persepolis, the ancient bazaar nestled against the foot of the great Apadana Palace, where merchants paused from their stalls to tend to the tools that sustained their trade. The air carried a whisper of warmth, softened by the distant murmur of the river Pulvar, as men in simple linen tunics moved with deliberate grace, their hands worn yet steady. Here, amid the woven mats and clay jars, the ritual of maintenance unfolded like a quiet lullaby, each motion a thread in the tapestry of daily life. Under the Achaemenid sun, the merchants, clad in tunics dyed in earthy hues of ochre and muted indigo, gathered around their wooden stalls, their fingers tracing the edges of bronze scales inherited from generations past. These scales, unearthed in archaeological digs at Persepolis, were marvels of Achaemenid ingenuity, their beams balanced with precision weights carved from stone and metal. As one merchant, his beard flecked with the dust of cumin, lifted a scale from its hook, the faint scrape of metal against the stall's rough timber echoed softly, a sound like the sigh of wind through the cypress trees. He wiped the pan with a cloth, dislodging specks of spice that had settled like fine sand, releasing a subtle aroma of coriander and turmeric that lingered in the air, warm and inviting. In this gentle rhythm, the merchants worked with an almost reverent care, their movements slow and deliberate, as if each tool held a story whispered by the ancestors. Archaeological evidence from the Achaemenid era, such as the reliefs, on Persepolis's palace walls, and the artifacts recovered from the treasury reveals how these scales were not mere instruments, but symbols of fairness in exchange. One man, his tunic sleeves rolled to reveal forearms, etched with faint scars from years of handling, poured a handful of fine sand over the scale's surface. Watching as it caught the fading light, the grains slid away with a soft rustle, revealing the etched markings that ensured accuracy. Their lines worn smooth by time. He hummed a low tune, a subtle wit in his voice as he murmured, "Even the mightiest king bends to the balance, though this one has seen more sunrises than I care to count." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the bazaar's packed earth floors, another merchant turned to his set of weights. Small cylinders of lead and stone that archaeologists have linked to the standardized measures of the Achaemenid Empire. These tools, often found in burial sites and treasury hoards, were cleaned with brushes made from animal hair, the bristles whispering against the metal in a cadence like distant rain. Spice dust, fine as mist, rose gently into the air, carrying scents of cardamom and rose petals that teased the senses, a reminder of the goods these tools once weighed. The merchant's hands moved in a hypnotic pattern, polishing each weight until it gleamed, the oil from his cloth leaving a faint, earthy sheen that caught the light like stars on a twilight horizon. Yet, amid this serene ritual, a quiet mystery lingered, one that archaeological finds have only hinted at through fragmented relics. The lost designs of these tools, innovative creations that blended Persian craftsmanship with influences from distant lands, whispered through the ages like an unfinished melody. Excavations at Persepolis have uncovered partial molds and incomplete blueprints etched into clay tablets, suggesting that merchants once employed techniques for forging scales and weights that were far ahead of their time, perhaps incorporating hidden mechanisms for greater precision. One merchant paused, his eyes distant as he examined a scale's pivot, its design smoother than any other, and wondered aloud in a tone laced with subtle humor. What secrets did our forefathers lock away in these metals, only to let them vanish like dew at dawn? The mystery deepened with each stroke of his cloth, as if the tool itself held echoes of forgotten knowledge, designs that might have connected to the empire's vast trade networks, but were never fully recorded, lost to the sands that now bury ancient Persepolis. In the stalls, the air grew cooler as evening approached, and the merchants continued their work under the soft glow of oil lamps, their flames flickering like gentle breaths. Sensory details emerged in the ritual, the cool touch of metal against skin, the faint grit of spice particles under fingertips, and the rhythmic scrape that blended with the bazaar's fading hum. One stall held a collection of measuring rods, slender rods of wood reinforced with bronze tips, as documented in Achaemenid artifacts from the Apadana. A merchant ran a damp rag along their lengths, the water evaporating with a whisper, leaving behind the scent of cedar and the subtle tackiness of resin. He chuckled softly, his wit a light thread in the calm, saying, "These rods have measured more than grain. They've gauged the patience of kings, though they'd never tell." As the maintenance progressed, the merchants shared quiet observations, their voices a soothing murmur that wove through the air. The scales, with their intricate balances, were not just cleaned, but inspected for the slightest imperfection, drawing from historical examples like the precisely calibrated weights found in the Persepolis treasury excavations. These artifacts show how Achaemenid craftsmen achieved remarkable accuracy, using alloys that resisted wear. Yet the exact methods of their creation remain elusive, adding to the enigma of lost designs. One merchant held a weight to the light, its surface etched with faint patterns that archaeologists speculate might have been celestial symbols, and pondered the mystery with a detached curiosity. What patterns did they trace from the stars, only to let them fade into shadow? The evening light softened the scene further, with the gentle scrape of tools against surfaces, creating a lullaby-like backdrop. Spice dust settled like a fine veil, its aroma mingling with the earthy scent of the merchants' tunics, worn from years of service. In this moment, the mystery of the lost designs took on a poetic weight, as if each cleaned tool carried a fragment of history that time had gently erased. Historical records, inferred from Achaemenid reliefs and artifact analyses, suggest that these designs were once shared among a select few, perhaps guarded as closely as the empire's secrets, only to disappear with the fall of Persepolis. As the stars began to emerge, painting the sky in shades of deepening blue, the merchants paused to admire their work, the tools now gleaming with renewed purpose. The sensory tapestry of the bazaar, the soft clink of metal, the warm spice-laden air, the cool press of polished surfaces enveloped them in a calming embrace. Yet the mystery lingered, a subtle undercurrent of wonder, hinting at innovations that might have shaped the world differently had they not been lost. In the quiet that followed, as the merchants prepared to close their stalls, their thoughts drifted to the broader tapestry of life, leading gently toward the next whisper of history. For in the heart of Persepolis, even the simplest acts held echoes of eternity, inviting reflection on the tools that bind us to the past. In the fading light of a Persepolis evening, where the ancient stones of the Achaemenid capital whispered secrets to the wind, the bazaar lay like a forgotten dream, once a throbbing heart of trade under Darius and Xerxes. It now unfolded as a tapestry of gentle decay, its stalls sagging under the weight of years. Merchants, their tunics frayed and faded like old parchments, moved with the slow rhythm of inevitability, their voices a soft murmur against the hush. Here, in the 4th century BCE, the market's decline unfolded not in thunderous upheaval, but in the quiet erosion of time, a mystery wrapped in the dust of unrecorded causes. The air carried a faint scent of lingering spices, cinnamon and cumin, now muted and stale, as if the very essence of commerce had grown weary. Stalls that once brimmed with bolts of silk and jars of myrrh stood half empty, their wooden frames warped by seasons of rain and sun. Awnings, once vibrant with dyes from distant lands, crumbled at the edges, their threads unraveling like forgotten tales. One could almost hear the sigh of the fabric as it shifted in the breeze, a subtle reminder of grandeur lost. The merchants, their faces etched with lines that spoke of decades past, tended to their wares with deliberate care, their movements a lullaby of resignation. An old man in a tunic worn thin at the elbows arranged a few remaining figs on a weathered tray, his lips curving into a wry smile as he murmured, "Even the sweetest fruit must one day wither, my friend." As twilight deepened, the bazaar's pathways, once crowded with the shuffle of sandals and the barter of tongues, now echoed with sparse footsteps. The ground, packed earth smoothed by generations, felt cool and yielding underfoot, dotted with patches of moss that crept in like uninvited guests. Sensory memories lingered. The faint tickle of dust motes in the air, the occasional rustle of a bird nesting in the rafters above. These were the subtle witnesses to decline, each detail a thread in the larger weave of history. Archaeological reports from Achaemenid sites, unearthed in later centuries, reveal traces of this transformation. Fragments of pottery and faded inscriptions that hint at a once vibrant exchange, yet they offer no clear answers, only the enigma of why such vitality faded into silence. Imagine, if you will, a stall near the central thoroughfare, its canopy listing to one side as if bowing to the inevitable. Here, a merchant with silver in his beard sat cross-legged, his tunic patched with scraps from better days. He handled a single, ornate bracelet, its gold dulled by neglect, turning it slowly in his hands. The metal felt cool and smooth, a contrast to the rough-hewn wood of his stall, and he chuckled softly to himself, a wit born of quiet observation. "This trinket has seen empires rise," he might have said, his voice a gentle wave against the stillness. "And now it waits for one to fall, as if the gods themselves grew bored of our games." Such moments, preserved in the archaeological echoes, paint a picture of a community adapting to shadows, where the decline was not a sudden storm, but a gradual mist that settled over everything. The quiet of the market amplified every small sound, the distant bleat of a goat echoing from the hills, the soft clink of a jar being set down, the whisper of wind through cracked pillars. Smells interwove in a tapestry of the past earthy loam from the nearby fields, the musty tang of stored grains slowly spoiling in their bins. These sensory layers, drawn from reports of excavations at Persepolis, speak of a place where life persisted, albeit diminished. The merchants, their numbers thinned, gathered in small clusters at day's end, sharing tales over weak tea brewed from wilting herbs. One, a woman with a tunic embroidered in fading threads, adjusted her shawl and spoke of distant memories, her words laced with a subtle irony. "We traded in wonders from the Indus to the Aegean," she said, her tone as soothing as a lullaby. Yet now, even the winds seem to carry less. This unrecorded mystery, the heart of the bazaar's fade, lingers like an unspoken question in the air. Archaeological findings, such as those from the Apadana Palace ruins, show signs of abandonment, layers of sediment building over once bustling floors, tools left as if their users simply vanished. But why? Was it the subtle shift of trade routes, drawing caravans away to newer horizons, or perhaps internal strains? The empire's vast reach straining at its seams. Though no chronicles detail it directly, the enigma adds a layer of calm intrigue, a puzzle wrapped in the serenity of decline, distinct from the lost ledgers or daily rhythms of other tales. It invites contemplation, a gentle nod to the unknown, where causes remain as elusive as shadows at dusk. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden haze over the stalls, the merchants began to close up, their movements deliberate and unhurried. A young assistant, his own tunic still bearing the marks of apprenticeship, helped secure a tarp over a pile of unsold rugs, their patterns worn but still beautiful in their imperfection. The fabric's texture, soft and threadbare, evoked a sense of history, tactile and real, a reminder of the bazaar's former glory. In this moment, one could almost feel the pulse of the Achaemenid era slowing, not with drama, but with the quiet acceptance of change. Subtle wit emerged in their exchanges, like an elder merchant quipping, "Perhaps the gods preferred silence to our endless haggling." His voice, a soft ripple in the evening calm. Sensory details abound in these archaeological narratives. The cool stone beneath one's fingers as one traces the outlines of ancient counters, the faint, earthy aroma of clay seals left behind. Reports from sites like Pasargadae, though focused on Persepolis's counterpart, echo similar patterns of gradual desertion, reinforcing the mystery without resolving it. The bazaar's decline, then, becomes a story of whispers rather than shouts, where the consequences unfold in the rustle of leaves and the dimming of lights. Merchants in their worn tunics embodied this transition, their resilience a quiet testament to endurance, even as the market's lifeblood ebbed away. Yet amid the calm, there was a beauty in the decay, a soothing rhythm that invited reflection. The air grew cooler as night approached, carrying the distant scent of jasmine from the royal gardens, a floral note that softened the edges of loss. One stall, tucked in a corner, held a collection of small carvings, ivory figures from African shores, now gathering dust. The merchant there, his eyes distant, ran a finger over their smooth surfaces, smiling faintly at their stories. "These little travelers have outlasted us all," he observed, his words laced with that subtle wit, turning the grim into something almost poetic. As the stars began to emerge, painting the sky with their gentle light, the bazaar settled into repose. Archaeological insights, pieced together from fragments and foundations. Paint this scene with accuracy, avoiding the specifics of trade flows or daily bustle. Instead, they focus on the aftermath, the quiet aftermath of an empire's twilight. The mystery of the unrecorded causes remains, a soothing enigma that lingers like a half-remembered dream, inviting one to ponder without urgency. And as the night deepened, the stalls stood in silent vigil, a transition to whatever dawn might bring, where new stories could whisper into being. In this narrative of decline, the Persian bazaars of 4th century BCE Persepolis offer a lullaby of history, their fading glory a reminder that even the mightiest echoes eventually soften into peace. In the hushed glow of a Persian twilight, where the ancient stones of Persepolis whispered secrets to the wind, a team of archaeologists moved with the gentle rhythm of a lullaby. Their brushes danced lightly over the earth, stirring up faint clouds of dusty clay that carried the scent of forgotten centuries. The air was warm, laced with the earthy aroma of sun-baked soil and the subtle tang of aged metal, as if the ground itself sighed in contentment at being disturbed. Here, amid the ruins that once bustled with the life's blood of an empire, lay the echoes of bazaar merchants, whose legacies threaded through the fabric of modern Iran like a finely woven carpet. The excavation began modestly, with hands clad in soft gloves, tracing the contours of buried relics. One archaeologist, a woman named Dr. Farah, paused to examine a glinting object half emerging from the clay. It was a set of scales, their bronze arms etched with intricate patterns that caught the fading light, shimmering like stars in a desert night. The metal felt cool and smooth under her fingers, a stark contrast to the warm, grainy dust that clung to her skin. These scales, preserved by the dry embrace of the Persian plateau, spoke of a time when merchants weighed not just goods, but the very balance of commerce and culture. According to UNESCO reports from the site's designation as a World Heritage in 1979, such artifacts were commonplace in the Achaemenid era, symbols of the fair exchange that defined the bazaars of Persepolis. As the team worked, the scene unfolded with a soothing cadence, the soft scrape of tools against stone blending with the distant call of birds settling for the night. The scales, once used to measure spices, silks, and precious stones, now rested in the careful hands of those who sought to revive their stories. Museum records from the National Museum of Iran detailed similar finds, revealing how these instruments were not mere tools, but emblems of a societal order where trust and precision governed trade. In modern Tehran, echoes of this legacy persisted in the labyrinthine bazaars, where vendors still haggled over goods with the same measured poise, their stalls adorned with remnants of ancient designs. The glint of metal in the lamplight of those markets mirrored the scales unearthed here, a quiet reminder that the past lingered in the present's gentle folds. Yet, amid this rediscovery, a subtle mystery wove through the air. like a half-forgotten melody. The scales bore faint inscriptions, worn by time, but hinting at tales of merchants whose names had vanished into the winds of history. One etching, barely visible under the layer of patina, seemed to depict a crescent moon alongside cryptic symbols, perhaps a code for a long-lost narrative of adventure and loss. UNESCO archives suggested that such markings often accompanied personal seals belonging to traders who traversed the Silk Road, carrying not only wares, but wisdom from distant lands. These merchants, as per museum catalogs from excavations in the 1930s, were more than peddlers. They were custodians of knowledge, their stories etched into objects that outlived them. But what secrets did these scales hold? Why had the tales of their owners faded, leaving only shadows in the clay? It was as if the artifacts themselves guarded a gentle enigma. A whisper of lives lived in the balance between prosperity and obscurity, inviting curiosity without demanding answers. The archaeologists proceeded with a calm deliberation, their movements as fluid as a river's flow through the ancient valley. Dr. Farah knelt closer, her breath steady as she revealed more of the scale's details. The metal surface, polished by centuries of silence, reflected the soft orange hues of the setting sun, casting a warm glow that danced across the surrounding ruins. The dusty clay parted reluctantly, releasing a faint, musty scent mingled with the sweetness of wild herbs that grew nearby, creating a sensory tapestry that enveloped the site. In this moment, one could almost hear the faint echo of voices from eras past, merchants calling out their wares, the clink of coins, the rustle of fabrics in the breeze. These sensations evoked the enduring spirit of the bazaars, where legacy was not just in the objects, but in the intangible threads that connected generations. Modern Iran, as documented in UNESCO cultural heritage assessments, continued to honor this inheritance through festivals and markets that mirrored the ancient ones. In cities like Isfahan, contemporary artisans crafted goods with techniques passed down through millennia, their workshops echoing the vibrancy of Persepolis's prime. The scales, now carefully documented in field notes, cross-referenced with museum records, represented a bridge to that continuity. Yet the mystery deepened as the team uncovered a small compartment within the scale's base, containing what appeared to be fragments of a seal. This seal, adorned with motifs of lions and lotuses, symbols drawn from Achaemenid art, as per historical records, suggested a personal story. Perhaps it belonged to a merchant who had navigated the perils of trade routes, only for his exploits to dissolve into legend. The enigma lay in the absence. Why had these tales, rich with the spice of adventure, been erased from the annals? It was a puzzle that teased the mind, much like a lullaby that fades before its end, leaving one to ponder in peaceful reflection. As evening deepened, the air grew cooler, carrying the soft fragrance of night-blooming flowers that dotted the ruins. The archaeologists paused to share quiet observations, their voices low and rhythmic, infused with a subtle wit that lightened the weight of time. These scales, one remarked with a gentle smile, have outlasted empires, as if they knew the secret to eternal patience, waiting for us to catch up. Such comments wove a thread of humor into the narrative, reminding all that history, for all its gravity, held a quiet charm. The team's findings, aligned with authenticated sources, painted a picture of resilience. The bizarre merchant's legacy, in the form of rediscovered artifacts that influenced everything from today's jewelry designs to the architectural arches of modern markets. Sensory details abounded in this serene tableau, the feel of the scale's cool metal against warm skin, the visual play of light on etched surfaces, the auditory hush broken only by the occasional flutter of a bat's wings, all combined to create an immersive experience. One could imagine the merchants of old, their hands calloused yet deft, handling similar objects under the vast Persian skies. Museum records from the British Museum's collections, which include parallels from Persian excavations, confirmed the scale's role in daily life, emphasizing their cultural significance without delving into the mechanics of trade. This legacy, so tenderly unearthed, spoke of a people who built not just economies, but enduring traditions, now revived in the quiet digs of Persepolis. The mystery of the forgotten tales persisted, a soft undercurrent in the excavation's flow. Perhaps the inscriptions hinted at a merchant's final journey, a voyage that ended in the shadows of history, leaving behind only these silent witnesses. It was an enigma that invited contemplation, not urgency, aligning with the calming tone of the endeavor. As the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant jewels in a bazaar's display, the team wrapped their work for the night, the scales safely stored for further study. In this legacy, one found a soothing continuity, where the past and present intertwined like the threads of a Persian rug. The rediscovery of such artifacts in modern Iran served as a gentle reminder of human ingenuity's persistence, a narrative that lulled the mind into peaceful reflection. And as the night deepened, with the ruins settling into silence once more, one might wonder what other secrets awaited in the dawn, drawing us gently toward the next chapter of exploration.